Good morning, everyone. For the people online, if you could, just put in the chat, make sure you guys can hear us before we get started. Anybody? We got some? Okay, cool. All right, so welcome to the CAD user group meeting for everyone online and in person. We'll get started here. Thank you for everyone for coming. So first, we're just going to do a couple housekeeping stuff. For everyone in person, make sure you guys check in right outside the door. There's a little touch screen out there. That's how you'll get your certificate for coming and your CPDs. Online attendees, we're only going to be giving out CPDs for in-person attendees, so sorry if you were expecting that and you're online. Everyone online, in the past we have had a live stream and a Teams. We're no longer doing that. We're just going to do everything through Teams. So hopefully you guys are on Teams listening to me and seeing our screen. But another note is if you guys are on Teams, make sure you mute yourself. And then be sure to use the chat option in your Teams to ask questions, and we'll be monitoring and we'll try to answer all of them. Recording of this will be posted on our wiki page. The link's already on the agenda for the page of where the recording's going to go, and I'll put the PowerPoint there as well. Today, for people that are in person, the cafeteria is closed, but there will be food from, Street Foods? Let's see, what's the name of that website? Street Food Finder. If you type in like ODOT food, it'll come up. Today, it's a Mexican taquitos. And if you plan on eating here, that's an option. You don't have to. That's part of the reason why we end at noon. But if you do plan on getting that, I suggest you order online ahead of time because they typically run out of food. So just a side note on that, and then I will hand it off to Rachel.
Was it food truck day?
Food truck day, like the street food.
Okay. So today is food truck day, and they won't bring the food down in the cafeteria. It'll be outside the lobby. Or is it in the cafeteria today? Food truck day. They go every other day. One day in the cafeteria, one day food truck.
Brandon knows all this.
Brandon's not here today. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Rachel Lewis, Administrator of CAD Mapping Services. I've been in this role since 2012. And we have really went through a lot of morphosis in the last 11 years. It's been very interesting, not only with staffing changes, but COVID changes, technology changes. We've had a lot of stuff going on. So I'm pretty sure most of you have probably seen me around. For anyone that hasn't heard yet, Mark McLeod retired from ODOT in January. We also lost Jack Kerstad our last fall, in case any of you were under a rock all winter. He's very much alive. He is still working. He went back to work this week for a consultant. He retired from ODOT. Our group lost him, but life has held on to him. So with that, with all the changes in staffing, Brandon Williams has assumed the role of the ProjectWise administrator of the ProjectWise team. We did hire a new staff, Luke, who is down in the first row here. He is assisting with ProjectWise stuff, and I don't think Arthur's in the room. We have a college intern that's been working almost full time with that team as well. So then for Mark's replacement, I think the obvious has happened. So John Dursick is going to be assuming the role of the CAD manager. With that, we're going to restructure a little bit, and Matt Iben has taken on more of the project management role with implementing new technologies, mentoring new staff, running our support group. And then we have Adam and Tess, who will be moving under Mathen and working closely with him. So we will have one position open for the office now, and I have no idea what we're going to do with it. I think what we need are people that are going to be hard to find. So if there's anyone in the audience who has any interest in doing programming, CAD, survey, mapping technology, BIM, you just throw something at me and we could go from there. So if you have any strong interest in working in technology and working with our office, feel free to reach out and contact me and let me know. I'm really excited for this year. We are kicking off some BIM initiatives. We're doing some 3D modeling pilot projects. So we are working on our change management this year. I've really worked hard with the managers on the importance of change management and communication plans. So hopefully you guys will see a lot more communications from us and get information in a lot more organized manner. I think that's it. Anything else I'm missing, guys? Nope. All right, well, enjoy your day today. JD says a surprise later, so you guys stick around for the end. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so moving on with the agenda, which I didn't print any agendas out for everyone, so you can pull out your phone and go online and click on the agenda link if you want to see what's upcoming. But the next topic is the Item Master update for the 2023 spec year. So I sent an email out. Hopefully you guys are all on my mailing list about this update. But I wanted to go over just a couple things with it because I did change some things around and hopefully clarify, I think, a confusing point of the whole setup. So the Item Master itself is on SharePoint. So that's like the source, and it gets posted there and updated pretty much daily. And then the GenSum has a copy of that in that file. And when you hit that refresh button, it goes out to that SharePoint. It's like a data connection and it synchronizes. So with this newest version of the GenSum that I posted, I changed it up because frankly, I'm tired of updating it every time the spec year comes out. So I just made a little button that you can click to refresh and it'll go out to that SharePoint site and see all the available spec years and let you choose from it. But the main point I'm trying to make here is that it contains a copy of the Item Master in the GenSum. The real source is out there in the SharePoint site. So with that, there are also two other main things that deal with the Item Master, and the other one is the Item Master add-in. So that's in the Excel ribbon, how you get the ODOT tab, and there's a bunch of buttons. So that is set up very similar to the GenSum, where there's a copy of that inside that add-in file. And so that add-in always gets loaded no matter what file you open. You can open up a blank Excel file and you still get the ribbon and you get that copy of the Item Master in there. And what we have been doing is with the sub-summary sheets, we do not have a copy of the Item Master in it, and we've just been linking to that add-in. And I'm kind of switching gears here. I don't really think that's the best way to go anymore. So that is why I have not updated the Excel add-in yet to see the 2023 Item Master in there. So if you notice, the GenSum can now see the 2023 spec year, but the Item Master add-in still doesn't. It still only shows 2019 and 2016. So I just want to be kind of like clarify, GenSum has a copy of it in, Item Master has a copy of it in, and the sub-summary sheets do not. The sub-summary sheets are linking to either the add-in or the GenSum. So in the past, everyone's pretty much just linked to the add-in because it's easy. It's right there. It's automatically loaded. But the problem with that is that add-in is getting updated. It doesn't stick with your project. So if you're refreshing that add-in and you come back to a project you did a couple years ago, well, those sub-summary sheets on that project still are linked to that add-in that's been being updated over the past couple of years. So now you don't really have a true representation in your sub-summary sheets of what the Item Master was at the time you filed it. So it's much preferred that you link to the GenSum instead. So I'll go over that here in just a second. But to reiterate, here's some screenshots of what the new one looks like. You see there's the spec year button with a little refresh. You hit that button and it'll repopulate this drop down. with all of the spec years that it can find on the SharePoint site. So you don't really have to hit that until the next spec year comes out, but at least it'll be there already set up. So other than that, it kind of works the same way. You select the spec year you want, and then it'll basically fix the sheet up so that all the formulas are going to display the right spec year information. And then obviously there's still that green refresh item master, which is going out to SharePoint, refreshing the local copy inside the GenSum. Okay. So reiterate the add-in, always loaded. I have not updated it yet. I'm still going back and forth on if I should update it or not. I see the benefit of if you want to do a quick search, you can just open Excel file. You don't have to go find a GenSum or something. You just open a blank file, you go to that tab, hit search item master. It's really quick and easy. So I like that functionality, but I don't like the linking, which so if you guys have strong opinions on that, feel free to email me. Like, no, you really need to update this or not. So right now it's not updated, just to clarify. Pretty much already reiterated this with the problems with linking to the item master, and I'd rather you guys link to the GenSum. So I wanted to show a quick video here, just showing how to set up those links in the sub-summary sheet. So I'm going to hit play here and kind of just walk you through here, but you still need the add-in. This is not going to work. Okay. So in the add-in, you don't have to have the sub-summary sheets open. You're just going to go to that ODAT tab and you're going to hit that Fix Links button, right? It's going to open up this dialog, and you got a bunch of different options for what you want to link to. So on the screen, I selected Select Location, the last option, and now I'm just going to go and choose the GenSum for this project. All right. So I'm saying, here's what I want to link my sub-summary sheets to. It's going to read that GenSum file, and it's going to see all of the item masters it can find. It should only find one if you're using the newest one. You select that sheet. Now that GenSum is set. Now you're going to go and add in all your sub-summary sheet files for that project. And then you just hit Fix Links. And it'll go through all those files you added and make sure all those sub-summaries are linked to that GenSum you just selected. And you're done. So if I go and open up that sub-summary sheet, I go look at the formulas, and I look at the name manager. Here's how you can tell what you're linked to. There's two named ranges in there. And if you look, it'll list the path to that GenSum file. That's how easy it is to tell what your sub-summary sheets are linked to. I know it's probably hard to see, but you just go to those name manager and you just take a look at the path that's listed. And that'll tell you what that specific sub-summary sheet is actually linked to. So hopefully that's pretty clear. Just kind of changing what we've kind of recommended from linking to the add-in to linking to the GenSum. So I don't know how many more ways I can say that, but that's what I recommend you guys do. And then that way your GenSum, you refresh it for that project when you want to, and everything for that project, the sub-summary sheets are all referencing the same copy of the item master, and it can stay there. And when you file it, you don't have to refresh it. You got that saved copy of your item master with that project at the time you filed it. So that's why we're recommending that. I think it's a better approach. The add-in was just an easier approach. You don't have to go and select a file. You could just hit Fix Links, and it can just know because the add-in's loaded. So if you guys have more questions on that, feel free to email me or rather submit a support request. So I did throw in a quick survey question about the future of the item master, which I think Kyle should be adding to the chat if you guys are watching online. I don't know if this QR code is going to work for you guys. I feel like I tried to make it big, but basically asking about the future of the item master add-in and what if you guys want it updated or not. I'm also debating about changing the recommendation on where it's located. So I've always said just everyone link to the copy within your standards, and then everyone's linked to the same copy. So when I push out an update, you don't have to do anything since you're linked to that workspace location. But I'm debating about changing that up and moving that over to like the user folder and be more user specific. And then each user could update when they wanted. So I don't know, I should have brought that page up here. Should have logged into it. I didn't log into it on this computer. I'm not gonna be able to see the responses. I didn't think that through, did I? Yeah. Oh well. It's all right. I think I could share it with you. So, I guess I'll take a look at this later and see what the responses are. But if you guys could fill it out, let me know what your opinion is, what you guys want with the future of that add-in. Kind of still haven't made up my mind, but you guys can see where I'm kind of leaning towards. I really want to make sure people are linking to the GenSum. So not updating the add-in is one easy way to make sure you link to the GenSum, but I haven't finalized that decision yet. So feel free to put your comments in there and let me know, and I'll take a look at it. See where we're at. Time. Oh, we got a couple questions. All right. The ODAT tab is not an internal thing only. It's the add-in, so the item master add-in. You can find it within our standards, our workspace. So off the top of my head, it should be like ODAT standards, ODAT utilities, GenSum, add-in, and you should see it right there. There used to be some scripts for back in like 2013 when it was originally released. I haven't updated the scripts, but there is a PDF there that shows how to manually install that add-in, and then it'll show up for you. So nope, it's been out there for a decade now, because I think it was originally released back in 2013. So and it really hasn't changed since it was released. So it's probably due for a little bit of an update. But I guess I don't know how you guys were doing your linking before without that. Maybe you just weren't linking to or using those sub summary sheets. So. Integration where project was. So it's definitely on the list. I haven't gotten around to it. The whole GenSum itself is due for a little bit of a revamp. So one of those things would be to integrate with ProjectWise, but I got a lot of other things on my plate. So the workarounds are to use ProjectWise Drive, or the buttons will still work if you have all of the Excel sheets checked out and open. So that's another way you could still import or bring in all the data from that, the more automated process of that. So I hear you guys on that question. It's definitely been asked multiple times. I just haven't gotten around to it. There are some workarounds. You can also export out from ProjectWise, do your import process, and then bring it back in. So there's a couple workarounds. I know it's not ideal, but for the time being, until I can chisel out some time, it's kind of what we're stuck with, because those were written back in 2013 before we even had ProjectWise. All right. So for more questions, feel free to submit a support request. So with that, I wanted to also go over. Oh, clicked on that button again. Some upcoming changes. So the standard construction law drawing list app with the supplemental specifications part. So first of all, I have not updated the app to bring in the 2023 supplemental specs just yet. I'll hopefully get around to that soon. Part of the reason was I was revamping it to try to read from the website directly, so you guys can be confident in the dates that are listed, because I'm pulling it from the source. But we're still working on a couple kinks with that. And with that, speaking of supplemental specs, if you guys remember, back in 2022, we had DRC update, and we removed the SS800 date from the title sheet and said see proposal. We're going to change that back. So we're going to change it back to the way it was. So in the July of 2023 update to the DRC L&D Volume 3, Basically going to reverse that language to put the date back on the title sheet. Moving forward, what date should I be using? And so part of the reason why the date was originally brought off the title sheet was a little bit new digital signatures and a little bit, I guess, back and forth with construction and what the date should be. So what the date should be the current date at the time you file. But I realize that there are SS800 dates that could affect your design, could affect your quantities with changes. So if there's not enough time or resources to incorporate the latest spec changes at the time of filing, then you're going to leave it with the previous date. But I want to stress here that we still want that date to be as new as possible. We want to make sure we keep up with the specifications. And I have a red line because I didn't get back here to add the actual effective date for this. And we're still working out that date, and I'll send out more. But the July 21st DRC update is when we're going to add that back in. But we have this time frame where the date's on the proposal, and now we're going to put it back on the title sheet. And I just want to try to work out that time frame so that we're not also putting it in two spots and have to be different dates. That's what I don't want. So it's going to be a letting schedule or file date that's like on or after July 21st. So I'll get that actual date information so you guys know if you should be putting that date in your title sheet or not. But that's kind of where we're at. I think that should be making a lot of people happy to kind of go back. We definitely heard the dislike with that change, and so I think we worked it out. But the main thing is to make sure you're keeping your spec date somewhat new as you can. So when a new one comes out, you should be checking it, seeing if any of those changes are going to affect your quantities or design. If not, then you should be able to put that new date on. But you should stop future dating it. I know that's some people were doing that based off of when it was going to let and putting a date that didn't exist when it was filing. We don't want to encourage that either. So just the latest date at the time of filing is kind of where I'm getting at here. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. So you'll see that in the next major DRC update. So that's all I had for this topic. Any questions coming in about that or not? Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is I sent another email out about this was our FTP server basically shut off. So hopefully you guys have seen the email about this, kind of know what's coming. So basically, I think we all know FTP is not the most secure. Internet Explorer is pretty much the only way you can still access it because Chrome, Edge, they all disabled it a while back. And I think Internet Explorer with the last Windows update has officially been killed in Windows. I think the writing's on the wall that FTP was going to be going away. So what our IT office has come up with is we're going to keep the server. We're just going to open up the HTTPS protocol on that and turn off the FTP protocol. So this is going to happen on March 6th at noon. Okay, so it's a couple weeks from now. So when that happens, a couple things. So on the screen, you'll see there's a link. The red part is just going to switch to the green color. That's all. That's really going to affect people. We're just, instead of using FTP, we're going to use HTTPS. Okay. So what exactly does this mean? This now gives you the ability to navigate the FTP in a web browser again. So couldn't do that before because Chrome had basically cut it off. So you'll be able to go to that website and you'll see the folders and you can get in and navigate it and download individual files still. This also means that the V1 workspace, that's going to stop working. The sync tool that I had out there, that will stop working because it was all based off the FTP protocol. And so when the shutoff happens, that app will just stop working. So with that, We will, once the shut off happens, we're gonna stop updating the V1 workspace. We'll put out a final zip file of that workspace because the sync tool won't work anymore once we're done with that. So I do recommend you run this a final sync before the 6th. We'll probably do one more push to get all the updates out that we've been working on before this shut off, and give you guys a couple of days to run that sync tool before it shuts off so you can still get your workspace updated. But I think hopefully you guys all knew that was coming. We pushed it for a while now. We originally said it was going to be shut off. We're going to stop updating the V1. I don't know, it was a long time ago now. So we've been pushing it along, but with the FTP, it just seemed like a good time. So with that, same thing goes for the V2 installer. So I've updated the V2 installer and sync tool to work with the HTTPS protocol. So that will continue working as long as you update that admin tools for you guys who are more the admin side or setting up the standards. You just want to make sure you go get the latest version of that. So FTP clients that you guys might have been using are going to stop working. So back when Internet Explorer pretty much was the only route to work with FTP and Chrome stopped working, a lot of people churn to FTP clients. So that's just, software download. There's plenty of free ones out there to navigate and work with FTP servers. Well, once FTP is shut off, those clients are no longer going to work. So the main functionality you're using here or losing as externals is the ability to bulk download or download folders. From the website, you're not going to get that. You're just going to be able to download individual files. So that's the main thing we're losing for externals, is that ability to bulk download or download a folder, since those FTP clients will no longer work. Internal users, we have that share I've listed that you can type into your File Explorer and you can navigate through File Explorer if you're an internal user. So that is, I guess, the summary of the FTP access and what the changes are. So really all the paths are the server staying and all the paths are the same. It's just that entry point. So if you guys have any links to our FTP site, you're going to want to fix those and just fix that protocol part. So any questions coming in on that at all? Hopefully that's pretty clear. So I think we all saw the writing on the wall on this one. So March 6th is the cutoff at noon. So with that, I will pass it over to Matt, and he's going to go over some OpenRoads Designer updates.
Cool. Thanks, JD. Yeah, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. I may run over a minute, then I won't talk as fast as I planned. I'm going to talk about OpenRoads Designer 10.11, some of the new functionality, some of the issues or concerns that we have. Talk a little bit about, kind of reiterate what JD just mentioned about the version 2 workspace, as well as retirement of the version 1 workspace. So ORD 2022 release 1 update 11 is a mouthful. So the version number there is version 10.11 00115. That's the current commercial release as of today. It was released September of last year, so it's been out a little bit. And there was a schema change. So that second number in the version changed to 11. We're currently running 10.10. So that second number changing indicates that there's a schema change there. And throughout the rest of this presentation, I'm just going to call it 10.11. The power platform, MicroStation power platform was updated for ORD to use the update 17 of MicroStation. I think there's actually 2 more releases since then, 17.1, 17.2, but some of the things that we sort of leave out when we talk about ORD updates are some of the new MicroStation functionality just in the base product there. And by the way, this is all a bunch of just slides. I don't really have any fancy presentations or videos or anything. So anyway, they added just in MicroStation the ability to measure your model units from within your sheet. So right now, as it stands, if you go into your sheet model, We're scaling everything down to fit the sheet, where in the past with Geopack, we scaled our borders up to fit the scale we wanted. So there are advantages and disadvantages to that. And one was that you couldn't measure the true units of that within the sheet model itself. You had to go to your base map or to your drawing model. So there's a toggle on the tool settings dialog for all the measure commands now to use reference scale. And as long as you snap to an element that's referenced, it'll begin using the units for that reference attachment. So it's also nice if you have multiple scales on your sheet. So if you have maybe on a bridge detail, you know, 3/4 inch equals a foot, and then 1/4 inch equals a foot, and the same sheet model, you can just measure. You'll get the correct units when you measure those. They added a tool or a group of tools called area tools. In V8i, this used to be an extra MDL that you could download. And I always wondered why it was just never included with MicroStation, but you can see where it's at there on the ribbon. This basically allows you to go in and measure an area and place a piece of text with that area there. And I would use this a lot of times doing my pavement calculations. I would create a quantities type file, and I would just go in and measure my areas, especially at intersections and whatnot. And you could place that text in there. Well, the enhancement they added now is they made the text, it can also be a field. So if that area changes, the text will also change rather than just being static text. So that could be helpful for those sort of things. There's a new tool, and I scratched my head for a while when I first saw, this was included, was this import PDF vector. This is a tech preview, but when you first try it, it doesn't quite work. You have to actually set a configuration variable to make this happen. But what it does is add support for importing or referencing or opening PDFs as vector data rather than being raster data. The only test I really did on it was one of our standard drawings, which is a pretty clean drawing, and it worked pretty well. The line work all came in. It didn't handle curves really well. It just kind of made line strings or complex shapes out of those. And text is just converted to, lines and line strings. So don't expect to be able to pull in a bunch of text. But I didn't try it on any old scan plans, but maybe you need to import something, some detail or something that you don't have drawn in CAD. You might be able to do it that way. So. And then update 17, MicroStation is Windows 11 certified. ODOT's not quite there on the operating system side of it yet, but maybe you guys are moving forward. So just know that that's certified for Windows 11. And then there are a lot of other updates and stuff. And then later I have a slide that has a bunch of links where I pulled a lot of this information from. Okay, so on to ORD 10.11. There's just the general version numbers of everything that's included with it when you install it for Lumen RT, Descartes, anything else you might be interested in. So some of the just general enhancements that they've added is a civil feature remapper tool to update your terrains, geometry, corridors, templates, template drops within a DGN from one feature to another. Now, you're probably thinking, why would I want to do that? But maybe you've got some old project in SS2 or SS4 that's been on the shelf for a while. Maybe as consultants, as probably most of you are here today, you're working with other clients, right? Maybe you have a project or template library you want to swing over and work on in your ODOT workspace. You can use that tool then to kind of remap those features to the ODOT features. They added in the Explorer option, there are some standard or groups now for rail, site, drainage, and utilities. Just kind of help better organize things. So you'll see that list gets a little bit longer when you look at the feature definition list or in the standard, what's it called? OpenRoads standards part of Explorer. Civil Labeler. We kind of scratched our head when they first introduced Civil Labeler as a tech preview, and you had to manage it with an XML file because we've always known that they've been trying to get everything into DGN libraries. So with 10.11, they moved that XML file to a DGN library. Not really a big deal, but I'll talk about more of what that impacts you later, at least for the current situation. But civil labor itself, they added some new functionality and usability, like a lock perpendicular. So if you're adding in a bunch of labels, we just want to lock those perpendicular, your little station ticks at the end of your guardrail or whatever. And some new border frames. We don't use a whole bunch of those, but if you like that stuff, you can go in and play with those. You can now also override text and dimension styles. So previously or currently, you really get what you get in that whatever's set up in the label definition. It doesn't allow the user for a lot of flexibility if they need to modify it. So kind of nice to do that too. Then the last bullet point here is they added cross-section 2-point method for the slope between or a distance between 2 points. We found a VBA that was posted on the Bentley communities, and we added that to our workspace with a couple modifications in one of our last big updates. So that kind of does what we already sort of implemented, but and a lot of there was some other enhancements that were included, and a lot of those were some of the things that we had submitted to Bentley as well. You can now add your station ranges on your sheets with a new text favorite. So there's for plan, profile, cross section, there are text favorites for minimum and maximum stations. So hopefully we don't have to go in and label those on our plan and profile or cross section sheets now. It'll just read the stations that are in the sheet file there. We will need to figure out how to integrate those text favorites into our item types that we're currently using so that those are populated in the sheet manager. And I guess that brings up a whole nother thing. What happens if somebody modifies the sheet stations within sheet manager? So that'll be a programming challenge for JD. So there's a new expression builder. This probably doesn't apply for most folks sitting out there unless you're really dealing with workspaces or modifying things, but maybe you need to add some new item types for something that we don't have or something that's special to your project. So what it does is it allows you to go in and build an expression based on an element's properties. So you can go in and select the element, and it'll tell you or show you the properties of that element, and you can build your expression that way. I wasn't sure how to word this one here, the create templates classifications integration. So in the create templates dialog, they've added a new classification option or setting that you can add to any component. So I can tell my pavement that it's roadway, or I can tell my sidewalk that it's sidewalk, median, shoulders, roadside grading, whatever the case is. This used to be called what Bentley called semantics. So this has now just been renamed to classifications. And previously you couldn't add those to your components in your model. You would add that after the fact once you exported that to IFC or iTwins or whatever. So now we can add it to our model. We can filter and do other reporting based on the different classification you might have on that component. Closed meshes are something that we at ODOT haven't talked a whole lot about. That was a new feature. I believe it was in 10.11. And this has been promoted by Bentley for creating meshes or modeling of existing features. So like your existing pavement, unsuitable material, anything like that. You can use it for anything you want. But they've added some improvements. If you've messed with it or played with it so far, it's not difficult to use. It just, you had to go in and select each element you want to do, run the command, go to the next one, run the command. So now they've added the ability to use multiple boundaries with selection sets or pick lists. So you can go in and select them all. Say I want this to be my existing pavement at 3 inches deep, and it'll go ahead and create a closed mesh of that. I did sort of task Adam recently with adding a section to our training guide, and the ball's in my court as far as reviewing what he did. This can be a little more, closed meshes can be a little more or a little less intensive as far as the file sizes that get created. So currently our training guides are using surface templates to go in and model your existing pavement. One of the projects I looked at recently, it was a bigger project with a pretty big terrain, but the surface templates that were used created meshes. The file size was like 178 megabytes. When I duplicated that using closed meshes, it was like down to 40 some. So you can imagine the processing and the load times that might improve. The last bullet point here is you can also use different element types as boundaries. And what I mean by that is different 2D or 3D complex shapes, or meshes, or terrains, or corridors. And in one of the examples in the Bentley playlist, they actually use a selection from the models, the corridor models cross-section view, to use the bottom of their pavement to create a mesh that went down to their existing ground in the fill type situation. So. The next thing they added was our computing station offset with expression. So you can add a reference element or alignment to a component. So if we select sidewalk, for example, I can go in and in the properties dialog, I can go in and tell it I want to add a reference alignment to that. And in the properties, it'll list the station and offset of that element, so where it begins and ends. So from the quantities perspective or checking quantities, all you really have to do is go select on that element and you have all that information there. You can also add multiple reference alignments to a component. Say at an intersection, for example, you've got your curb or your sidewalk going around the radius of the return there. You can add in the reference alignment for each roadway. The create and cut and fill volumes tool now will search for previously created meshes. So if you've gone in and created your CADD file and created those prismoidal meshes to get your earthwork volumes, I know that I've done it on numerous occasions. I just kind of rerun the command, and next thing I know, my quantities are double or triple because I have 2 or 3 of those sets of meshes in there that I forgot to delete, or maybe the level was turned off or something like that. So it'll search for that when you run the command. It'll prompt you asking if you want to delete them. You do have the option to say yes or no, so you can delete them or keep them. In general, I'm going to recommend you delete them and just start over so you don't add in or have duplicate results or quantities there. The feature definition wizard, this is another one. If you're not really working with a whole lot of workspace management type stuff, this may not apply to you all the time. Again, it might though, and on the other hand, that maybe you have something special to your project you're trying to create a new feature for or whatever. But if you have ever needed to create a new feature definition, you realize there's a lot of parts that go into it. So this is kind of like, I would compare it to the corridor objects dialog where you can, that bucket list icon, it shows you everything about your corridor. This kind of does the same thing with the feature definition. So it'll go in, you can create your feature definition, you can create your feature symbologies, your element templates, set your levels, weights, colors, add your annotation groups, item types, rather than going to bounce around. Oh, I got to create the feature. Now I got to go create the feature symbology, which means then I got to go create an element template. And then I got to come back and do the annotation or whatever might apply there. So it's kind of neat. I haven't really played around with it much more than looking at the video, but I imagine that'll help at least us. And I'm sure in some cases it'll help some of you. There is a new super elevation cross slope text favorite. So what that means is we can add that into our curve data or curve set that gets plotted under our drawings, and we can populate the Emacs now. Currently we just have Emacs equals and a blank field for you to go edit. Now it'll read the super elevation from the curve that we've assigned to it and apply that to our curve data. It's also dynamic, so if that super elevation rate changes, the curve data will also be updated, just like any of the other curve data would be. All right, drainage and utility stuff, not really my forte, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. So one of the things that we all wanted to see early on was, conduit symbology, meaning right now we're only seeing in 2D the center line of a conduit. So now we can add in symbology or feature definitions, feature symbologies for the inner and outer walls of their conduits. rather than attach the 3D model to see the, the outside boundary of that pipe. So we can do those differently. We can also control them differently in plan and profile. So that should make a lot of folks happy in the plan production world, and we're not seeing a bunch of extra lines that we didn't really need before. There's also some new properties as far as controlling the symbology with element templates for your hydraulic grade lines and your energy grade lines. I don't know how many, do we show those? Do you guys show those on your plans, or even if just as design? There's no hands here, so I didn't really think so, but they also added support. Apparently folks wanted to be able to show multiple hydraulic grade lines on their profiles. So if you have multiple scenarios you are running or looking at, you can display those and see how those are apply on your conduit there. They added some new connection point options, so the ability to add a connection point as well as connection rings or regions. So this will automatically trim the conduit to that connection ring if a node is moved or even rotated, whereas I think currently it's a manual adjustment. You have to go in and modify that to trim it back to that new connection point. And then there's a new tool to delineate catchments for existing inlets, as long as you have your terrain on, and I think you can select any terrain, but of course you want your existing terrain, you select the inlets you have, and it'll delineate the catchment areas for those inlets. I know we have culverts out there that are made up of multiple pipes and barrels, and in my experience, I don't know if I've ever worked on a project with one, but they heard folks asking for this and added the ability to add multiple barrels at once with a single connection region. So meaning you can select the center of your head wall and that'll be your connection point, whereas before you had to create separate connection points for each pipe. And you can also adjust the gap between those pipes. I don't know how that actually worked right now, but and then you can actually have different sizes of conduits and pipes within those. So maybe your outside conduits are smaller than your two inside conduits, maybe on a 4-barrel type situation. So there are new item types that are added here. So support for the new drainage and utility feature definitions and the single source of truth. We've heard this many a times from Bentley, so hopefully this really gets us there where we can see the item type properties that were added in the plan view in profile, cross-section, 3D, without having to go back and forth or even run an extra utility like we have to go in and sync up all those properties. So pretty much everything I just mentioned as far as MicroStation and ORD is in all these links. So if you want to review this PowerPoint later, or one of the guys can post all these in the chat, you can come back and look at those. The YouTube playlist really show all the examples, a lot of things I pointed out. There are a lot of other enhancements and updates. Those are just kind of the big ticket items there. All right, so what are ODOT's issues or concerns about maybe going ahead? Again, there's a schema change here, so we need to be cautious of that so that everyone's kind of using the same schema. But what else have we kind of run into? One of the things right away is Civil Labeler. I mentioned earlier the XML file conversion to DGNlib. They do provide an import tool, which works really well, brings everything in. What I did notice right away is it leaves off any of the leaders that are attached to my labels. So we're gonna have to go in and clean up every single one or check every single one, make sure they all still work the way we intended. Not really any showstopper by any means, but it's just gonna be an effort on our part before we get that out. And if you were to go ahead, and I know that some folks already have moved to 10.11, when you go in to load Civil Labeler, you're just getting a blank dialog because it's looking for a DGN library that we haven't defined yet for 10.11. So it essentially it's not going to work if you migrate that way. You can import that XML file on your own if you want to go in and you're comfortable doing that and modify it, or you could create your own DGN library and add it. That's one of the advantages of going to the DGN library versus the XML file is we can have our labels that we predefine, and then you could set up your own company or project ones, add to a DGN library, and then you could have them all populated in a list. One of the things we found, and it's mostly with the drainage and utility labels again, is that the labels are not getting associated to the element. So when we select a conduit, it's just showing the text properties or the text favorites and the item type properties. We have to go in and manually tell it to resync that information. And it does work after you do that, but it's an extra step. So that seems to be mostly on drainage and utilities, but it was hit or miss. We haven't quite narrowed it down to everything that works and doesn't work just yet. And then the point-based labels like station offset elevation, those seem to be fine, but it's the ones that pull some item type information that still cause an issue. The old place label command that we're kind of trying to get away from and use civil labeler instead still kind of works as a workaround. So it's not like we're kind of left stranded there. So JD just said that Bentley support has told us that it's the item type issues with civil labeler are fixed in the next release. So probably should have been, well, we don't know what the next release is yet, but. So let's see, the drainage and utility item type sync app that we have, that stopped working with 10.11, but we've already released an update to that. So as long as you're using the current version of the Workspace that has the version 1.006 of that, you should be good to go if you're using 10.11. If you're using project-wise managed workspaces and the new manage configurations part, as you can see on that screenshot, when you launch ORD or MicroStation on the left-hand side, you'll get this manage configuration dialog. You can define multiple locations if you have different clients you're working for or whatever, different workspaces you're pointing to. You can do that in your managed configuration, but what we found is that is breaking our project-wise managed workspace. So Bentley says that that'll be fixed in ProjectWise 4.0, as well as a whole bunch of other updates that they keep saying are coming there. So we're waiting on that. And then the quick fix or the workaround there would be just to reset your user preferences, and that cleans up any issues that you might have had. All right, so you're sitting there saying, great. Matt, what does that mean for me, or what does that mean for us? So where does ODOT stand on updating the OHDOT CEV02 workspace for ORD 10.11? We've tested a lot of these features that I mentioned. Obviously, that's why we have some of those issues or concerns there. We have not published any workspace updates for 10.11 schema. That doesn't mean that you can't continue on if you really want to press forward, and knowing that those are some of the things you might run into. You can still use the current workspace that has the 10.11 or 10.10 schema on it if you want to go forward. For the time being, though, again, we have not published anything with the 10.11 schema. All right, yeah, that's great for now, but what's ODOT's plan for moving to 10.11? At the moment, we're currently considering just skipping 10.11. And we want to see if the next release, obviously, and we know that Civil Labeler has some more fixes coming, as well as some other things there. So currently, we're not really supporting that, or at least not supporting a workspace for that. And our suggestion is to use ORD 10.10.22.01. This was not a commercial release, but it was a priority build that Bentley made for ODOT. And the reason they made that for us is when they went to 10.10.21, whatever that version number was, something on the MicroStation platform broke our custom apps that place cells. So anything that places a cell wouldn't work or would crash ORD. So they issued this priority build. Unfortunately, we can't distribute that to you, so don't call us asking for it. But if you submit a Bentley service request, they can give you the download for that. All right, JD sort of covered all this earlier. The version 1 workspace is going to be retired. We had sent out an email beginning of January indicating this, along with the FTP update stuff that JD just mentioned too. We initially said when we went to version 2, we the only one to kind of keep that around for 6 months, maybe a year at the most. I think we're going on a year and a half now. Managing 2 workspaces is, it's double the effort. We got to change things in one or the other, and it's really for something that's fairly minor, just because of the difference in fonts. So again, this is going to be retired March 6th at noon, and again, in conjunction with that FTP access ending, we do plan to have one final update for this next week. So look for that. It is next week, right? February, yeah. So look for an update there. And after that, we're not going to update version 1 anymore. And again, it uses that, the version 1 sync tool uses that FTP protocol to get the updates and downloads those for you. So once that turns off, that sync tool will no longer work for you. And internally, that doesn't really mean anything for the internal users, but external, go ahead and make sure you get one last sync or download one last update, next week, hopefully, if you can. We will still post the zip files for each of those schemas on the ODOT website, so you can download those later if you don't get them before the FTP site's shut off. Again, for externals, version 2, the version 2 sync tool, the version that's, I think I actually copied these from JD's slides earlier. So version 1.0.0.5 will stop working March 6th. So make sure you update that to the current release. If you update to the current admin tools of 1.1 or 1.0.0.6, you also get the sync tool of 1.0.0.5. All right, well, that stinks, right? You're all sitting there. What does that mean, or what's ODOT's recommendations for projects still in the version 1 workspace? Anybody here in the audience still have projects using V1? 1, 2, 3, 4, a couple heads shaking. So there are still some folks using this. Projects near completion, say stage 3, final tracings. My recommendation would be just leave them in version 1. I wouldn't want you to go in and have to really change anything at this point, at that point of your project. Unless maybe you get into stage 3 and suddenly your funding's gone and it's going to sit on the shelf for a couple years. Projects early on, plan development, maybe into stage 1 a little bit. Go ahead, and I would recommend moving those to the version 2 workspace, so you're always going to have a current workspace that matches the schema of the version that you're using. I would not spend a whole lot of time if you've got a lot of plans, production already started, going in and changing fonts. If a district came and asked us about modifications for font changes, I think we would probably tell them to reject those. We don't really want you going in and spending a whole lot of time. Yeah, you might have some mismatched fonts on some sheets of Arial and Calibri together on one drawing. I know that might drive me nuts in some cases, and I might change it, but I'm not going to go in and say change an entire project over. So just run with it the best you can. If you get reviewer comments that are, that have a keen eye and are really able to spot some of that, reach out to our office and maybe we can help navigate some of those comments and avoid any rework. Just as long as that project is constructible is all I care about. So that's all I have. Any questions? All right, good. So I guess whole support team now. Anybody here? What are a couple that you had?
Sync tool will be disabled. How is ODOT planning on pushing out updates to users?
So the question is, if the sync tool is being disabled, how are we going to push out updates to users? Sure.
So I guess just for people in the audience that might not be watching online, some of the questions that came in, one was, if we're going to stop, if the FTP is going to stop working, what about the sync tool? And so that's part of the reason why the V1 workspace is being, retired. Since that sync tool will stop working, we're also going to stop updating it. But the V2 admin tools that gives you a sync tool will still work as long as you update to the newest version. See, another question, how do you convert to the V2 workspace? It's not so much a conversion as it is setting up that additional workspace. So you can have our V1 workspace set up and our V2 workspace set up. Hopefully everyone's already done that because the V2's been out for, I don't know, probably over a year and a half now. Now, if your current projects are still targeting your V1 workspace, you can switch it so that it targets the V2 workspace. The caveat there is that you'll most likely see a mixture of fonts since you already started that project in one workspace that was using Arial and the new one's using Calibre. So as you start adding new stuff, it'll start using the new font for all the stuff that's already there, still has the old font. So that's the main thing. To switch your projects from V1 to V2, it's really just moving that workset configuration file to the V2 workset locations. But we're not going to get into that today. If you have more questions, feel free to submit a service request. Someone asked for a link to set up the V2 workspace. I provided that. Then I'm in the middle of writing a response now, but the question was, will ODOT notifications now launch the V2 sync tool instead of the V1? So that ODOT notifications, if you guys don't know what that is, when you installed the V1 stuff, it also installed this notification system. So you'd get a Windows notification when there was an update to the workspace or if there was an upcoming meeting. So that notification system was not included in the V2 stuff. That notification system can still work for like meeting invites, but it's not going to work for standards updates or workspace updates. So I'm just going to handle that from sending out an email to our user group email list anytime there's an update. So you want to make sure you sign up for our emailing list so you get those notifications, because that little notification app is not going to work for V2 anymore. Maybe one day I'll get back to it, but it was just time crunch and one of those things that got cut to get everything else out. So, and Kyle's already put the subscribe link in the chat for those of you who want to sign up for our mailing list. I think that's all the questions so far.
So JD just mentioned the mailing list. ODOT will be migrating that list. We're going to keep the same list, but the service that we use might change. So the look and feel might be different, for future updates. I don't remember when that's going to change, but.
Yeah, there's actually a meeting about it right now.
Yeah. So in the coming months, if you're not seeing anything from us, check your spam or junk folders just to make sure you're getting stuff. Maybe we'll blast out a test or something whenever we get the new service updating or running.
Yeah, we'll send out something once it's still in the early stages for that new mailing list. But I've also debated about, instead of porting, just restarting and trying to clean up that list, because every time I send an email out, I get just like a whole bunch of emails saying, this person doesn't exist. So I've debated about just doing a fresh start and having everyone re-sign up and cleaning out a lot of the old emails in there, but I haven't fully decided on that yet. So we're either going to port it or just send a mass blast out to our current list and say, hey, we're switching lists, sign up. So look for that in the future. It might be a couple months because we're still just in the initial talks of this new system rollout. So.
Anything else from the group here? All right, we'll turn it over to Kyle then.
All right, we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit. We're going to talk about some coordinate system updates that we have. So I know the last time we had a user group meeting, I talked about the low distortion projection systems that ODOT was coming out with. We've named those the Ohio County Coordinate System, so OCCS. I still call them LDPs, so it's really tough for me to kind of make the switch over to the new name. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the background, just so we kind of understand the direction we're going, and then we'll get into how we can actually use it and where we can find all that information about that. So they're going to be based off of county boundaries. We did that just to try to make it a little bit more user-friendly, instead of trying to combine it based off of some landmass or something like that, like several other states do. So our goal was to try to reduce our linear distortion to 10 parts per million. So a really tight coordinate system that basically allows our grid distances and ground distances to be the same. That's kind of the main goal behind it. So we did implement these for ODOT use, and then anybody else can also use them as well on January 20th with the DRCC update, and spelled it out in the L&D and the surveying mapping specifications. So it is out there to use, and basically all new projects will most likely start with this. So I kind of wanted to talk, that map doesn't show up very well, about why we picked low distortion projections. So most people are kind of familiar with this map. It's a transverse Mercator map of the world, probably on everybody's childhood walls at some point, or classroom. But what this does is it tries to minimize the distortion across some type of parallel. And they try to fit the world, the round world, onto that nice flat paper map that we have there. Excuse me. So what in reality actually happens is we get a bunch of distortions from size based off of that map. So on the left-hand side of the map here, you can actually see what that transverse Mercator map looks like compared to what the actual size of those countries are. And we can really see it the further north you go, and then, well, further south as well. You can start to see those distortions. And you can see that it's really meant to fit kind of in the middle. So the further north you go up towards the top, that's where you end up getting lots of distortion up here, the Greenland and things like that. And then we also see that distortion in the United States as well, if we were just to use that 2D paper map. So what did we end up deciding to do? We used low distortion projections. So instead of having one big mapping projection for the whole world, or we used to use state plane, that was one zone for Ohio North and Ohio South. We shrunk that down to the county level. So we're minimizing the distortions at a county scale instead of half of the state of Ohio scale or half of the world scale, if you were looking at that map that we had up earlier. These are all going to be integrated in with the NSRS updates, so the National Spatial Reference System, but that's not going to happen until 2025. And they're also changing that to work with international feeds at that time. So we decided to move forward with that, since that project was delayed by NGS, to go ahead and do the state plane coordinate systems the county-based coordinate systems at a state level with US survey feet currently. So that's what we've went out and did, and we released those. So we have 88 new zones, and they were approved by NGS for approval in the next release anyway. So we just kind of moved on with it. So this is the example I've used in the past, just to kind of demonstrate what this means to us. This is the Cuyahoga Valley Valley View Bridge and I-480, really long bridge. So if we look at some of the distortions that we end up having, if we use state plane coordinates, the difference between grid and ground is almost 0.3 of a foot just across the span of that bridge. If we were looking from a grid coordinate system, state plane grid, to the actual ground measurements. Now, if we use a low distortion projection, when we were collecting that information, like say we're using a GNSS receiver and we use the LDP, brought it in, we would see 9/1000ths of a foot of difference between the grid and ground distance. So essentially, by using low distortion projections, we're making the grid ground. So it's going to save a lot of time and effort when you're scaling projects. Everything's going to fit together a lot easier between these different coordinate systems, and it's going to allow everything to kind of reproject a lot more smoothly. So we released these on January 20th. So the Ohio County Coordinate Systems, they're posted on our website. I didn't do as good a job with the links as you guys did. So you can find them on our website. There's a page for it, and I do have it embedded in the PowerPoint as well. But moving forward, ODOT projects are going to be scoped with the OCCS county mapping projections, unless that project doesn't fit that type of environment. So we do still have the state plane north and south inside the standards, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But we can still scale a project if that fits the project that you're working with. If the distortions are too big, maybe you go into 2 different counties or something like that, it may not work by just selecting one of them. So we still do have that option. So what's on our webpage? We have a manual that we've developed. So we'll get into a little bit of that. We also have the zone parameters and some test points as well. So if you want to test your software, we have some points as well as the LDP coordinates of those. We generated Esri projection files, so PRJ files for all 88 counties, and we have those zipped up on our website. We have Trimble and Leica file formats, and we'll talk about some of the other manufacturers as well on the website. So there is a link there and a bunch of downloads that we have available. So inside the manual itself, we went a little bit different direction than maybe some of the other states that you might be familiar with. We kind of went in a little bit more basic, didn't go into as much detail on the actual designs of them. But we do have some coordinates, some brief descriptions of mapping projections, all of the zone parameters. We also have a distortion map for each of the counties. So if you're trying to see where those distortions might be higher or lower, we do have that in the map format, as well as those available test points, all in one single point there, or I guess document. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the different manufacturers. So for Trimble equipment, so internally we mainly use Trimble and Leica equipment. So that's why I'm going to go through a couple of those examples. So for TBC, you can go into the Coordinate Systems Manager and then import the .csd file that we have available on the website, and that will show all 88 of the counties. If you're looking for other state plane zones and things like that, they're just hidden in there. So if you do work for other states and all of a sudden you're like, oh, where's Indiana? You just unhide it in there, and then it'll end up populating in your list. So we didn't delete them. They're all still in there. We just hid them just to make it a little easier to find. In the data collectors, very similar process. You just have to browse and copy that CSD, that custom CSD, to the Trimble Data Systems files folder on your data collector, and then that'll show up inside of there as well. Very similar process for Leica Infinity, and Leica collectors. Basically, just going to go into the coordinate system tool and then import in. It's a TRF set file. And you basically just bring that into your DBX folder on your SD card or your collector, and then you'll have those coordinate systems inside your software, both in the office and out in the field. I want to talk a little bit about some of the other manufacturers. So TopCon in version 8 actually has the Ohio County Coordinate Systems embedded in it. So if you're a TopCon user, you can go ahead and use and download version 8, and it should be embedded in the software. And same thing with Carlson. So Carlson Serve PC and Serve CE version 7 has that built into the software already. So you can just use those in the native product. Now I want to talk a little bit about the Bentley products and how we can use these coordinate systems inside of there. If you're using the OHDOT workset creation tool, inside the dropdown of the newest version, we have all 88 counties, as well as the North Zone and South Zone that are editable. So those will all be populated in there. If you're an internal ODOT user, it's going to, when you type in the PID, it's going to find the county that is in Ellis, the main county, and it's going to default to that. So if you're an internal ODOT user, you'll have that little bit of, I guess, efficiency in there. But externally, you'll see the entire list of all 88 counties, as well as that North Zone, South Zone, and no GCS. No GCS gives you everything as well. That's an option in there. So what if my work set's already generated? How do I get the custom coordinate system in there? So really, we just need to place the CDTY file from our standards into the 990 workset standards GCS folder. And then we'll have to rename it as well to make sure that it matches the PID name. And then anytime you open those seeds, you can assign that coordinate system to all those seeds. So we have a variable that defines that naming and that location. So that's why it's looking in that GCS folder, and then it's looking for what we call OHDOT PID underbar custom. So it's either the PID number, or if you called it something else, that's going to be the name of that DTY file. And then it'll read it in the configuration. And you'll see all 88 of those in the drop down of your seed files. So I highly recommend setting it up in your seeds ahead of time, and then any file that gets created after that will automatically have that coordinate system assigned to it. Make sure that it's happening in the 2D and the 3D seed files. The drawing and the sheet seeds technically don't use it. I find it a best practice to go ahead and assign it to those files as well, in case there's some future enhancements that allow us to use that, allow us to use that information. So I also wanted to talk about the Esri files. So I call them Esri files, the PRJs, but they can really be used in any other, many other software programs, Global Mapper, numerous other products as well. It's just a text file that has all the parameters. So the low distortion projections are all based off of Ohio North and South. So they are NAD 83 2011, and then we just do some scaling and shifting to get them into the location that best fits each county. So it's a transformation that is something that you guys are all used to. It's probably already doing it in the background. Like if you bring in OSIP imagery, it's already reprojecting that to NAD 83 2011 if you were bringing that in anyway. So it's a very similar kind of process, and we've worked through that and haven't had any issues with that. So does anybody have any questions over Ohio County coordinate systems? Yeah.
Yeah, how much does that shift? They have a problem and accidentally shift from one system to another. I thought I heard Ray Food say it was about 500,000 and building and $1 million.
Yeah, so it's like, oh yeah, sorry, I'll repeat the question. So we were talking about the shift between LDP and like a state plane coordinate. The coordinates are vastly different. There's probably the false easting, I think, 50,000 meters. So there's a very big difference between state plane coordinates and low distortion projection coordinates. So you'll definitely notice that they're different. So yeah, we're going to have different false northings and eastings in between U.S. survey feet and international. So there'll be a shift. Oops, sorry. There'll be a shift in between those as well. So you'll be able to tell the difference once we move to that in 2025, 2026-ish time frame. Yeah, a great question. Any other questions? Yeah.
Using LDP, what's the best practice to coordinates from CAD to Latin long?
To Latin long. So the question was, what's the best way to convert from LDP to like Latin long? I personally would use a different software than the CAD platform, but you can do all of that inside OpenRoads Designer as well, just by switching coordinate systems. That stuff will reproject inside of there. Same thing with bringing in survey data that you had in a different coordinate system. As long as you're telling the coordinate systems what they are, it'll do that reprojection. I personally like to do my transformations in the native the survey package if I was bringing survey data in, but that's just my own personal preference. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So the question was, when should we be using these coordinate systems? So as of January 20th, basically any new project moving forward is going to be scoped with that, unless the survey operations manager decides that a state plane coordinate system that's scaled to ground will work better in that particular case. So hopefully that answers that question. But they're live and available for use now. And they're also available for use outside of ODOT as well. If you guys had any other projects that you want to work with it. All right. With that, I think we're going to take a networking break now.
Okay, well, I guess we're taking a break because a lot of people are standing up. We are running a little bit ahead of schedule here. So I don't think we need to take as long as a networking break. Let's see here. Where did my agenda go? So my agenda is gone. We're supposed to come back at what? We're supposed to break 9:40 to 10, but we're almost a little under 20 minutes ahead of schedule. So let's come back at, let's see here. Let's break until 9:45. We'll start back up a little earlier. I think some of the sessions this afternoon are going to go a little over, so it's okay that we're a little early. So let's do a networking break. We'll come back here around 9:45. All right, we'll get started back up here. Hopefully everyone had a good break. It's always good talking with people. I like the in-person one, but for those guys online, there's not that many people here, so maybe next time we can revisit the olden days where we packed the auditorium, right? I don't know if those ever will come back, but. So the next topic, electronic design deliverables. So if you guys have been looking at our wiki page, you might have noticed this document was out there. If you've dealt with anything with digital signatures, which is the next topic, you've seen that I referenced this. We have had electronic design deliverables document for a while now. Basically, I remade it and kind of brought it up to more of today's standards. The old one was really kind of heavy on the GeoPack side. But when I remade it, we also did digital signatures, so it kind of has two main parts now. Before the older version, it was really all about all of the reference files that you should be delivering with your projects. Now it still has that, but it also has a section for the plan set requirements. So we're not going to go over that section as we went over it with the digital signature stuff. And that's not really wanted to cover in today's topic. But I just want to note that there is that section now for plan set requirements, and then another section for kind of supporting document requirements. So that's what we're going to go over today. There is a wiki page for this, which I put a link in. I think it's already in the chat for you guys or online. You can go take a look at that. So basically, the gist of it is we want to get all of that source data that you use to create your plan set. So the Excel files, the DGN files, things like that. We want to capture all that data, and so we can archive it and be able to get it into our ProjectWise environment. And we want to do that more of like streamlined process. So part of what this revamp, and eventually I'll get to the new app that'll help you do this, is to make this process easier. So first, just kind of going over the main requirements. There's an index file to kind of just let the person looking at the CAD file or the zip file know what's in it. Because the other factor is not just for getting into our archive, but also making available to the bidders so they can use these files to help them in their bidding process as a reference only. So if they're getting this zip file of all this reference data, they might not really know what they're looking at, and that's where that index file comes into play to kind of help someone come in and see, okay, here's what's in this and here's where it's at. Okay. So the other main requirements is the CAD files, which I mentioned, alignment files, and I'll kind of go over some of the reasoning of why those are in addition to the CAD files. The surface files is another thing, all the engineering data, all the surveying data, and then kind of new from what we didn't have in the past was our CAD project level standards, capturing things like the seed files. So, when you submit the project to us and all these files, we know the seed files we use. We have the coordinate system data there. So those are the main chapters, I guess. I think I made them chapters, or maybe sections in the guidelines or the document. So I do want to add another note here that you'll see in the document that there's a little note that this pertains to Connect projects. So projects that are using the new Workspace, the Connect Editions products. For older projects that are using V8I standards still, there's a link in this document to the older electronic design deliverables document. And that's the one you'll follow for those older projects, because you're not doing everything in 3D like you are with OpenRoads Designer. So some of the file types are different, like for example, you don't have a 3D model. You can't really get those 3D line strings in V8I if you're using the GeoPack kind of technology, the old GeoPack way of doing things. But you have cross sections, and you can create a cross section staking report, which then the contractors, modelers can bring that in and kind of generate the 3D line strings from those. So a little bit different requirements for those older projects. So I kept the older document around for those, but really moving forward, this is the document. So hopefully that doesn't confuse people. I just left it and threw a link into the new one to the old one, from the new one to the old one, if you still have some of those straggling projects out there. But what I want to do is just kind of go through each of these sections a little bit more detail on what we're looking for, what it can do, and then I got a short video at the end that'll kind of go through it as well. So the project indexer file, it is going to be a little different from what you're used to from the old one. We had the old version had a different tab for each category. So you had a tab for base map, a tab for sheets, tab for your alignments, your services, engineering data. They all had a separate tab. And so with this one, we're just moving to one tab that's going to list all the data just right there, and there'll be the filters at the top, so people can just filter the data down to what they want to hopefully make it a little bit easier to use and not have to flip through all the different tabs. So that's one of the changes you'll see. I threw in some screenshots there, which might be a little hard to see, but the PowerPoint will be available in the video. I try to zoom in my videos too, but you kind of see the first column just lists the path, relative path. So it's not a full path, because if you're looking at a zip file, it's going to be relative to that zip file. So it won't be like a drive letter or anything, because it doesn't really make sense, because you're going to pass the zip file around, right? So it's just a relative path. We'll have a category. So the category is really going to be like that root folder. So like the 300, the 400 engineering, those root folders, and then the discipline will be the folder underneath that. So those are just really there to help you filter down the data, the name of the file file extension, again, there to help filter data down. The type, so I'll go over the types in a little bit more detail, but the application that I'll go over in a little bit is going to kind of auto figure out the type, but that'll be a drop down too. If you need to change the different types, the types are like base map, sheets, alignment, XML, surface XML, things like that. Some other things, just description, which will pull the descriptions from the title and comments, or if you're in ProjectWise, it'll pull the file description. So it's always recommended you fill those out because it makes this easier. A lot of times people looking at this index might not have any clue what the file name means, right? So we know, what KD, what FB, we know what those files means, but for the contractor they might not, and so that's where the description really comes in and helps them out. There's going to be a couple columns that will only get filled out if it's pertinent to that type. So like there's XML contents, so it'll read that XML file and pull out like the alignment name and things like that. There's also going to be the file and title, a file title and file comments column, a page number if it's a sheet DGN, a sub page number if it's got sub numbering, the sheet title, so it's going to extract that sheet title from the DGN file, and then we'll get to this a little bit later, but it'll also look at the missing references and the broken references. So I'll get over that in a little bit. The other thing is it will have another tab, which will make more sense here once I go through it a little bit more. But the second tab is going to be for like the folder owners. So if you have, let's say, a 401 engineering, a 402 engineering, basically saying, this 402 engineering folder is going with this consultant. And that's going to be partly I need that for the import process into ProjectWise, our data source, so I can kind of create those additional folders when we import the zip file into our data source. So that'll make a little bit more sense here in a second. So kind of going a little bit over the CAD files, I think this has probably been most consistent requirement. Your base map files and your sheet files is really what we're looking for. Now, we did add one additional requirement with this after meeting with the contractors, specifically the more of the modeling side. The one thing that really came out of that meeting was that they really are looking for 3D line string files. That's one of the major things that they want to be able to pull in when they're creating their models for AMGs and things like that. So base maps and sheets, I think we all know what those are. Those are hopefully pretty easy. You just select the ones that you want to include in the zip file and you include them. Now, 3D line string files, we don't really have, say, a file set up for that just yet. I added a video here to kind of go over a process that you could use to create a 3D line string file. So some things to know when the contractor's trying to pull in DGen files, they're kind of limited on what they can read, right? So they can't really read sheet models at all, and mainly just the base maps, and they can't read references either. They can't go and read across references. So this new requirement to include this 3D line string files is really going to be making a static line string file for them. So it's going to involve referencing in your line strings, basically merging all those references to the file and calling that your 3D line string file. So I get that that's a little bit additional work, but it's something that I think is needed moving forward as we are trying to pass this data along. Let me play this video and kind of go over a little bit more detail. So here's a section in the document, and I list some of the things that should be included. So like proposed geometry, your grade breaks, pavement transitions, barrier extents, things like that. So this section will most likely be updated as we fine tune what should be in this line string files. But really your edge of pavement, things like that, those 3D line strings that you're generating automatically anyways when you're creating it are what we're really looking for here. And it can't be referenced because the contractor cannot see that data. So I kind of bolded that here We're going to create this file, but can't leave those references in there. So I should be moving on to kind of give a quick demo. Hopefully, I guess I had a lot to say in this video. I guess I want to reiterate that it will be static, right? You're merging these graphics from the reference into this DGN file. So it's something you would do kind of at the end real quick. Maybe you set up the file with the references and then make a copy of that file when you're ready to merge it. So if you ever do change something in the future, you can go back to that original one with the references and redo the process. So I did create a new file type for this. So if you use the Create Design Files app, it should be the KL, I think, if I remember right. Yeah, it says 3D line strings as the description. So you can go create this file. You want to use the 3D seed file since these are going to be 3D line strings, right? So you might as well, it should be defaulted to the 3D seed. So after we create that file, go ahead and open it. And all I'm going to do is add the references to, say, my geometry, so my BK, my corridor files, things that contain those proposed line strings. So most time it's your corridor file. So I'll go and add these in. And this video has also already been posted on the wiki page as well with audio. If you guys have been searching around, you might have already watched it. So here I'm just going to add in those corridor files. And when I add them, I'm going to switch the model that I want to include to the 3D model and not leave it on the design one, right? I want to make sure I grab the 3D reference because that's what contains my 3D line strings. So after I add them, I'm going to go through and just turn off levels. So like all the surface levels, the things that really aren't 3D line strings that we don't want to include in this file. So you kind of just take a look at it and see what's still on and go through and turn it on or turn off what you shouldn't need to see. So mainly it's the surfaces, and then you'll end up with seeing edge payment, all those grade break lines is really what we're after here. And again, we'll fine tune the requirements as we get this more in use and get more feedback from the contractors of what they would really like to see. But this is going to make it a lot more feasible for them to actually pull in the data. So after I get all those levels turned off, you can rotate around, see if you're missing anything, but or you still have anything on. So then after you do that, I kind of would recommend the workflow would be to save this as a copy so you can come back to it if you make changes. So maybe you keep this as the reference copy, and then you make another copy for what you do your merging in. That way you don't have to keep re-adding the references every time you make a change. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm just kind of looking around, seeing if the line strings that I kind of expected to see are there. I do. So I think, if I remember right, I do come up here and save a copy of it. So I'll do a save as, just to save myself. But again, you're going to do this at the end of your project when you're close to the end, where there probably won't be more changes. But let me jump forward a little bit here. Oh, and I shouldn't have done that. Oh, man. That's why I don't like presenter mode. All right. So I'm doing the save as. So in my copy now, here's where I'll just do my merge since again, the contractor can't read across those references that I added. So I'll just go to my reference dialog. I'll right click on it and I'll hit merge into master and I'll click in my view and that will merge the references into this file, only the levels that I have displayed. And there is your 3D line string file. So might have been a little longer video going over a lot of stuff, but really add a couple references, merge it. There's your 3D line string file, include it in the zip file, and then that'll help the contractors out. So that is a kind of a newer requirement in the electronic design deliverables guideline that wasn't there before. Back in the Geopack days, we really didn't have 3D line strings to do something like this, unless you're doing like the OpenRoads tech. So hopefully that's not too much heartburn for you guys. I do realize it's a slightly additional effort there. So moving on, some other things, the alignment files. So while the contractors can read in your DGN data and get those line strings, when it comes to alignments, it's not going to read in the like stationing data. So that while DGN graphics are good for bringing in those 3D line strings, when it comes to the alignment data and stationing, it doesn't work so great right now. So that is why there still is a requirement to take your alignments and put them into LAN/XML format, and the contractor can bring those in and get that stationing data with it. So some recommendations, or I guess requirements, each LAN/XML file should only contain one horizontal alignment, right? Don't put like all of them in one, but you also will include your proposed profiles if there are any proposed profiles. You can include that with that alignment in that same LAN/XML file. And then when it gets time to running this app that'll help you, it'll actually extract those contents from the XML and list it, so people can just look and see what the names and profiles that are in those files without having to dig through the files. Now, one thing the old document had that this one I removed is we used to also require a report file to go along with it. That really just kind of felt more silly. I don't think anyone was actually looking at the report file. If they really wanted to look at the data, XML is not too hard to read, but I just felt like it was extra effort that wasn't really needed. So I took that report piece out of the requirements. It's just the LAN/XML file now. So I kind of had screenshots a little bit hard to see, but if you see from this is an example of what it would look like on the index Excel file, which I should have ran the magnifier so I could zoom in on this. But basically, I'll say alignment name, profile name. It just pulls it from the XML file. So I had videos out there from Geopack how to do this. Here's a video how to do it from ORD. It's very easy. There's just under the geometry section in your ribbon, there's an export option, which I really need to get better at pairing up my videos. Jump forward here. All right, so I'm over here in my geometry. You see that import export option. You're just going to go down to export geometry, and then you'll get a little like on your heads up display. It'll say what you want to export. Come in here and you'll choose LAN/XML. You can leave it on that 2.0 version. You can check on only active profiles. So if your alignment has like a bunch of other scratch profiles on there, maybe you did some ditch profile work or something. If you check that on, then you'll only get the active profile, which should be the proposed profile that you want to include. So then you'll just click through the prompts here. So you're going to export it out as a LAN/XML type, and then you'll select your alignment. So you just go over and you select your alignment, and then reset, because you can select multiple, but again, we don't want to select multiple. We just want one per file. So we'll click on that. We'll reset to complete our selection, and then we should get prompted with the Save As dialog. We're just clicking through all the prompts here, all those different options. So here's the Save As dialog. So you can choose where you want to save it. Now, I launched this outside of ProjectWise, but I believe it was one of the fixes in a couple of versions ago that it would open up the ProjectWise dialog instead, but I didn't launch this from ProjectWise, so it didn't launch it. But that's how easy it is to create a line XML file. You're really just going to click on your alignment, and then it'll generate that line XML file. So I'm showing the profiles, feature name. I think I'm just showing this because it will show up. So I opened up the file. You don't have to open it up. But if you take a look, you can see that the name is in there, and that's what I'm going to pull when I read it. Same thing with the profile. The profile name is in there. So you do want to make sure you're naming your profiles and your alignments according to our CAD manual. Typically, the CLP and then the route name for Centerline proposed. So that last thing was just kind of noting to follow the naming conventions so that people know kind of what they're looking at when they pull in these line XML files. So that's line XMLs or surface files. We're going same thing, line XML format. So mainly your existing surface, your existing survey data, export that out to line XML as well. If you have any proposed surfaces, if you went and generated like a overall proposed surface or any kind of those other surfaces you might have created through the process, you can also put those to line XML as well. So I have another video, very similar process for exporting out a surface to a line XML file type. I'll skip forward here so I don't put you guys to sleep. So I'm over there. I don't know if you saw. Let me back it up just a little bit. So I'm over here in the Train tab now, and I'm going to zoom in on the Export to File button right in the ribbon. So under the OpenRoads Modeling Workflow, the Train tab, then the Export to File. I'm going to click that, and I can select a train from the drop-down or graphically select it, choose your format. It's going to be line XML format. There are some options to put in like the project name and project description, which I don't think you have to put anything in there. I don't think I'm reading it. Let's see what I do. I guess I'm putting in the project name maybe. It's been a while since I made this video. Yeah, I think I was leaving it. I clicked on the wrong thing again. Go back. Okay, so you can put in a project name description of like the PID maybe or the counter route section. I think that's more optional. If you wanted to fill that out, you could. And you're just going to click through the prompts. And it'll, again, open up a Save As dialog. Save it. And then, there is a name there. The feature name is what will come through. So if I go and open that file, again, I don't expect you guys to open it, just kind of showing you the data's there and the name does get put in there. So there's that project name and description that you can put in there, and then there's the surface name. All right, so that's really how simple it is to create these file types. We've always kind of had this requirement, even back with the old document for creating electronic deliverables. So just really all your alignments, your existing surface, if you have any proposed, go ahead and put those to line XMLs. So moving on, so the other thing we want is your engineering data. So these are things like your Excel files, if you have any calculations, kind of all that source data that goes along with that project, we want you to include it. So your tables, so if you have a table that's inside MicroStation, like a sub-summary or something, we're kind of also expecting to get the Excel file if you used Excel to create that. And that's useful on several fronts. People are trying to create estimates from the contracting side. We'll go in and look for those files to pull that data a little bit easier. I've heard, internally our construction project managers are going in there and trying to pull that data as well if they can find it to help them go through their process as well. So we want to make sure we're getting that. along with any kind of other supplemental engineering files. If you're doing any kind of design work like HECRES or something, include that stuff too. So moving on to the survey data, there is a surveyor report. It's an Excel file, and admittedly, we are going to be doing a complete revamp on that. I think Kyle started gathering the new requirements from the last SOM meeting. So I know if you guys are on the survey side, I know you guys are probably, a couple of you guys have been submitting lots of tickets on this front and improvements to the Excel files or problems. And so it's not going unheard. I will say we're probably a little bit behind on that. We should have already made some of those changes. But we have started the process to kind of fix that up. But that survey report is going to contain, all the necessary survey data, monuments and more of the Kyle side of things. So we'll have more documentation on that, but that's still something that we want to make sure we're getting along with the raw data for that survey as well. We want to get that raw data as well. So that's the survey data side. So now another new addition is the project level standards. So this is the 990 workset standards folder. So we want to make sure we're getting that data. So if you're already, set up seed files with the correct coordinate systems, or if you are using multiple coordinate systems on a given project, maybe has multiple locations or something, and you already have all the seed files set up, we want to grab that data too. So that's another one that we haven't really collected in the past, but we want to collect that. So all that's going to get zipped up into a zip file. The naming convention is following a lot of what you probably have seen is the county-pid-CAD files.zip. I debated about not calling it CAD files because it's really more than CAD, but that's what we've been calling it, and people are used to seeing that. So for now, I left it as that. So what should be used is the main county. So in Ellis, so if you guys are external, you don't know what that is, contact the district PM, and they can tell you what's listed as Ellis as the main county. And obviously we know what the PID is. Okay, so there is an app to kind of help streamline this process, make it a little bit easier. There was an old version of it for the previous document. Some people said it ran a little long because it was going through automatically reading every DGN file, trying to pull out all the sheet info. So I've heard that complaint, and so when I remade this, I took a focus on how long it takes to run things. Another problem with the older version of the app was it was very rigid, as in it only pulled in files if it fit one of the categories. So like the base maps and sheets. So if someone was putting maybe, I don't know, a PDF in a base map folder, well, that PDF would never show up in the app because there shouldn't be PDFs in the base map, and then it wouldn't show up, and then it would get forgotten and not included. So that was another problem that I've heard. So I definitely opened it up to just be able to see everything as well. I think there was one more. Oh, and then another problem was a lot of the incompatibilities with corrupt files and it crashing because it's trying to read a corrupt file. So I did my best to minimize that. But if it's trying to read a corrupt dgen file, that I don't know it's corrupt until I read it, and then crashes. So I tried to move that to separate processes to keep the app from crashing and being more consistent for you guys. So I'll stop talking and we'll just go through the video. So I don't believe I pushed this out yet, so you probably don't see it, but I'll push it out here next week. I wanted to go over it here first before everyone started seeing it. But it'll be added to the ODOT ribbon right in the first section. I need to get rid of my intro on these videos. But it's up here. I left the old one in there as well, in case someone still wanted to see the old one. But obviously, I want you to use the newer one. Jump forward just a tad bit here. So I named it ODOT CE V02 indexer, but I'll still release it in the V1. So just note the name there. Come on. I had a lot to say when I recorded this video, apparently. All right, here we go. So I just zoomed in on the apps. Going to launch this indexer application, and it is a standalone application, so you can launch it from just outside. You don't have to be inside ORD to launch it. I just made it easier button. So you'll find it in the applications folder, just where you find all our other applications at. So it's in there. You can double click on it from ProjectWise or outside ProjectWise. You can open it, or you can use it from the ribbon if it's easier. So when you first open it, it's going. Oh, there's a help doc like all the other ones have, and an about. It's normal stuff. But the first thing it's going to ask for is what project you want to create an index for, right? Again, I'm going through more documentation stuff. So here's the document that I just went over, but we'll skip through that. So the first thing, you hit that search button and you're going to go and select your work set folder. This is the PID folder or whatever you guys end up naming it. It is integrated ProjectWise, so you can log into ProjectWise data source and go and navigate that way. So again, I really hate presenter view. I should turn that thing off. All right, so I'm going to select this folder location, and it's going to read that folder location and verify that it is actually got all the folders that it's expecting to find, right? And it'll tell you in the bottom of the results if it found something, if it wasn't a right format, it'll tell you what it's missing. But if you are inside the data source, it will list the data source you're in. It'll also give you a log out if you need to switch. And if it can find the PID number from the folder name, it will go out and read TIMS and try to pull in the county information. If not, you'll notice the PID and the county box will just be kind of default values. You'll just have to fill in those. Depending on how you name them, I might not be able to pull out that PID number, and it might not be in TIMS to pull from. Okay, so the first tab you're in is the root folder selection. So basically you're going to select the folders you want the application to search through. So here's where that processing time is coming in. If you know you're not going to include anything in the admin folder, don't check it on. So you're only going to check in the folders that you're going to include files in the zip file for. So by default, all the 300 and 400 should be checked down automatically, along with the 990 workset standards folder. That will be checked down automatically. The 990 folder you cannot check off. I grayed it out. I'm just always going to include it. Sorry guys, just how it's going to work. But you can check on and off the other ones. Typically it's going to be the survey and engineering folders. And then there's a little option at the bottom if you've already created to update an existing index. So you can check that on, and then you can go tell the application where your index file is saved, that Excel file, before you process, and then it'll pull in that data. It's really heavy on not overwriting anything you already have. So there, I think I ran it there. I just kind of paused it and sped forward, so you didn't have to wait on it loading. But you'll notice that once you hit that process selected folders, the next tab will be enabled, and that'll be the file selection. So here's where you'll actually go in and choose the files you want to include on the zip. All right. Guess I got ahead of myself again. I must have had something else to say. So really, you're just choosing your workset folder, putting in a PID and county if it didn't get populated, choosing the folders you want it to process, and click process. And then it will move you on to the next section. So here you'll see the 990 is grayed out. You cannot uncheck that. Okay, so now by default, just like before, the engineering surveying, they're all going to be checked on. So I added a little parentheses at the end of it to tell you how many files are within that folder, so you can kind of get it judged. But you can expand out and see all the subfolders and check on and uncheck things that you want to include. So basically, at the end of this section, you will have checked on all the files that you want to include in the zip file. Come on. All right, so there I'm starting to expand it. You'll see there's the subfolders listing all the files within them. Hopefully that's helpful, because a lot of times some of these discipline folders you got nothing in. So it'll just tell you right off the bat if there's a file in there or not. If you check off a folder, everything beneath that folder gets checked off. If you check on a folder, everything beneath that folder gets checked on. Pretty self-explanatory. So there, I don't have much. This is just a testing project. So I don't have many files in here, but you're going to check them all on. So right now, I haven't actually read any DGN data or anything like that. I just read the folder structure. I'm trying to keep the processing time down. And so once you're done with that, you will click on the update index with selected files. And if you are creating this from new and you don't have an index file created yet, it'll go ahead and create that Excel file, open it to your screen, and then place all this data in there. If in the beginning there was an option there, you could check on update existing. If you check that on, then it would open up that existing one. So here it is, updated, opened it up. It's really just tabular data, right? And there is a second tab, folder owners, which I'll go over next. But the first tab is just going to list all of those files. Kind of showed it a little bit earlier when I was going over the sections, but here I zoomed in a little bit. You can see there's the relative path to the file, the category, discipline, name, file extension. But you notice there's filters on all of them. So if you're trying to look for something, you can just go in and set the filter appropriately. So I should be going over a little bit. I want to go over a little bit of the categories that are auto-assigned based on where that file was located here. So if it's a DGN file or DWG file, it's inside of base maps. It gets the base maps category or type rather. So there's the drop down. It's kind of hard to see, but there's engineering data, survey data, base map, survey report, alignment XML. So basically just it's auto figuring that out. For the most part, it's going to be right, but it doesn't hurt to give it a cursory look over and make sure that the code made the right assumption. So there's that. It'll pull in the description. If you're in ProjectWise, that description is the ProjectWise document description. If you're outside of ProjectWise, it's just going to pull the title and comments fields and just put them in there. Now you can overwrite those. If you wanted to, you can type in the new description and it will not lose that description if you replace it. So it's going to retain that information for you. So you don't have to redo your work if you're updating an index or something. You can kind of see there's a couple of XML files in there, so I populated those. So that's the one file it will read. So it will go ahead and read those line XML files and make sure or figure out what type it is, if it's a surface or alignment or if it's something else before it tries to extract the name and the information in there. But that'll automatically get populated. That's the only file type it has actually read the contents of in this process so far. So let me move forward a little bit. So we'll get to this next section here in a little bit with the references and the DGN data, how it'll extract that. Some pretty cool stuff going on with the missing references stuff. But moving back over to the application, so that's adding all the files that you want included. But then the next section is going to be telling me who the folder owners are. So those are those root folders that you checked on in the first tab. So it'll be populated here. All those folders that you included in your index will be listed here. And it's just asking for the company full name and then an abbreviated name. The main reason I'm doing this is so that when I import it into ProjectWise, I can create the equivalent folder in ProjectWise. If you guys are using a 400 and we're using a 400, well, I can't use 400 for you guys since we already made use of that. So this is how I'm going to do it. So you're just going to put in the name. I really went back and forth here. I debated about making this like a list and to keep it standardized and make sure that everyone's using the same names, same abbreviations, which I decided to go against. So if you guys could, kind of do a little bit of due diligence and making sure you key in like the right abbreviation for your company, and try not to have all your users using a different abbreviation. But it's not as important. You just, if you look through our data source, you'll just start seeing different folder names because people submitted different abbreviations. So that's the way I went. So there's just a quick example. If ODOT was the owner of that survey folder, I'm putting ODOT down. If HDR, whatever company it is, that's what I'm going to put down. And then when I'm done filling that out, I'll just hit that update index and it'll populate the second tab. So hopefully that makes sense. It's really just the folder, those root folders in the project directory, just saying, hey, this company was working in this folder, this company was working in this folder. The 990 folder can just be the prime, since really everyone is working out of that. There's not an individual one for that. So then after you do that, it'll move you on to the last tab, and this is the index file processing. So if you included a DGN file, you will see a drop-down to choose a version of either a Connect product, so ORD, OBM. So it'll look at what you have installed and populate your list. So you can choose which application you want it to use to process the DGN files in the background. And so if you don't have any of that, you won't see that. If you don't include a DGN file, you won't see that drop-down, and you won't see the button that says populate update DGN info. So when I hit that button, it will start a background process that will go and look at only the DGN files that you have included in your index. So here's, again, the previous version of this app, it was just automatically looking at all of them. So it took a lot longer to run. So this, I kind of tried to minimize that. So if you are in ProjectWise, you do get this initial prompt about manage configuration, copy out. But after that, it should stay all in the background. And it'll just go through and pull out, if it's a sheet file, it'll pull out, say, like the sheet title and populate that. It'll get the numbering, the sub numbering. If your file contains a page range, like multiple sheets in the same file, all on different models, right? One sheet per model, it'll list the sheet number as a range. Just the lowest and the highest is, I just did some quick checks. So you can kind of see in there, I don't know if you guys can see it, but the people online can see it. You'll see some of them have ranges listed, and some of them have just the number listed. So granted, page numbers should be P dot. Hopefully everyone knows that. The sheet title is useful just because you can see what that sheet was now. If it has multiple lines, like a subtitle or title 2, it'll pull that data as well and just put a little bar in between so you know. And then the last thing we'll do is we'll check for missing references and broken references. So a missing reference means that the reference is not broken, but you did not include that reference in your index. Right? That's what a missing reference means. It's just, and so it'll list you the number, and then there'll be a comment if you hover over it, and it'll give you more details about that reference that's missing. Or if you have all the ones that are missing, it'll say, hey, this file, this model is not included in your index, but here's the reference in this file. And the broken references is saying, hey, there's a reference in here that's broken, and it'll try to give you as much detail as it can. It'll say, in this file, in this model, this reference is broken. So ideally, we don't want to see missing references and we don't want to see broken references. So here's a great way for this application just to tell you, here, this file's got some missing stuff. Maybe you go look at it and go, oh yeah, this is an old reference. Let me get rid of that. We don't need that in there. Or, oh, I forgot I needed to include this file because it is referenced and is being used. So it's a nice little check for you there. So that is the intent here, is to try to make sure the data we're getting is not too junked up. If you, well, let me say that, I guess. Because we really don't want the scratch files. We don't want the data that is just there, not really holding any pertinent value to us. So that's part of the reason why the index is here. So you don't have to include all of that. We don't want you to just zip up your whole project and have all the extra data that we don't want. Right here, we're giving you the ability to check on what you want, and then when you create the zip file, it will maintain the folder structure. That's the important thing, because when I import it into our data source, I still want that folder structure. I just don't want the extra files. So everything listed on the index. When I go back to this application here in a second, there's a button to create the zip. So anything listed in the index file is what will get included in the zip file, and will maintain the folder structures. And that's how simple it is. Now, when I click this create zip file, it should open up a save as dialog. Now, it will force you to save your index. So if you did this whole process, right now this Excel file is open in memory, right? It just opened it up to memory. There's no real save location. If you try to create the index zip file before you save it, it'll prompt you and say, hey, you need to save this file first. You go ahead and save it and then try again, and it'll create that zip file. How am I doing on time? When was the session? Okay. It's supposed to go to 45, 10 minutes. I'm a little ahead of schedule. That's all right. So there, I think I'm going to click that button now, and it'll create that zip file. So there's that message. It's open in memory. You must save it. So, okay, I'll go save it. Then you tell the application where you're saving this. I don't want to make the assumption of where to save it. I did that in the past, and this just caused problems, especially people wondering where it saved it at, right? So I'm trying to always let you choose where to save it. Same thing with the zip file. It'll prompt up and say where you want to save it. I think I do start you off in the desired folder. I don't know if that was the reviews folder or the contracts folder. Well, in ProjectWise, I don't, I guess. Outside of ProjectWise, I do. So I'm here. I'm just going to go and navigate and go pick where I want this saved. I'm going inside my project, going into contracts, and the 04 reference files folder is kind of where that final resting spot's going to be. I let you choose the folder name, but I go ahead and I choose the name based off of the PID and county boxes. So I'll kind of do the naming convention for you there. So if I go and take a look, I should see that zip file in there. That's all there is to it. So not too much has changed. I kind of facelift on the interface and the application, but overall, a lot of the same things are still required. We added in that 3D line strings or moved the reports, but that's all it is. I think this is just, I'll skip this part, but this is going back and showing you how to update an existing one. So you just check on that update existing index and then choose the actual index Excel file, and then it'll read that data in. Now, the thing to note here is that when you read the data in, it will check on all of the files that are listed. But if a file is listed that it can't find in the folder structure, obviously it can't check it on, right? Because it's not there to check on. It will list that file in the results section at the bottom. It'll be red. It'll say, hey, this file doesn't exist anymore. I did open up the kind of freedom to show everything, but the still kind of requirement is that all the files are within that PID folder. So don't try to add something outside, because when you run this, it's basically going to disappear because you can't find it. So it'll recheck on the files, but every time you place the index, it's replacing all the data. So if you need to add one file, it's not like you only check that one on. You read in the existing data, it checks on all the files, and you just check on the additional file that you want added, and then it'll just replace all that data. But it will maintain the descriptions. If you typed in descriptions in that Excel file, it will maintain those when you replace it. So the video will go over, I guess, more detail on that side, but I think I'm going to skip forward because I think I'm losing you guys just a little bit. I think you guys got the concept down. So with that, are there any questions that pertain to this electronic files? Yep. Anyone got questions out in the audience? So the question was for the online viewers is with the like missing or broken reference number column at the end, is it okay to manually edit that to change the number down, or should we go back and run the app again? Really, it's up to you on that. So it's really there as more of a guidance and to show you. So when you're submitting, you're actually including everything or fixing up the files a little bit better. Now, when I import it, I'm most likely going to rerun that process anyways to get that. Another thing I didn't mention is that it is writing all of that reference data to that Excel file. You just can't see it because part of the import process into ProjectWise is going to be to fix all the references to ProjectWise references. So I'm capturing all that reference data anyways. So changing the number doesn't change the background data. But again, I'm probably going to rerun it anyways, just to be safe. So I would say it's not like a necessity, but it also isn't. If you go back to the reference file and fix it and hit that button again, it'll update too. So I'm not heavily concerned on it, but I would like to say that they should be zeros or close to it. No, by no means am I going to send it back to you because there was a number listed. I don't think we're going to go that crazy. I thought it'd be cool to show it and give you guys a little bit of feedback before you submit it, because when there are a lot of files, it might be hard to figure out what might be missing. So,
Can I add to that?
Yep.
Put yourself in the end user of that data shoes, right? You're the contractor, you're the sub-consultant working on it. You receive that file, you open it in ORD, and the reference is red, right? It can't find it. My first question is coming back to you, is that file needed? I don't know that it's not needed or not. So I would say, if I were you, to avoid questions downstream, and you may be out of the picture by the time the contractor gets it, but he doesn't know that that list of files you didn't intend to include anyway. So I'd say clean up your files the best you can before you submit them anyway.
Any other questions for the audience, I guess? All right, so what about on the chat?
Okay, so there's some that I answered, and
Okay.
there's others I thought were easier to
Okay.
explain. The first one, I did answer this one, but can you hear me out there? So the 3D line strings are part of the modeling. The feature definitions on the points define the line level in the KM file. Why is this file not being used? And I just responded, and maybe you want to add to it, that we're just looking for a single file with all the break lines or line strings in it compared to multiple KM files that might exist.
Yeah. When you look at the world of DGNs, there's quarter files all over the place, right? And the 3D line string files for the contractors, it's going to be, just that place they can go to and pull in all that data rather than shifting through all these files. Oh, this one was in a reference, so it didn't bring in that data because they can't read across a reference. So that's really what the main driver was behind that file was, we'll just reference them in, merge them, and then they're all there. It's simple, easy to say, hey, go look here. Now, I do realize that it is static at that point, right? It's merged into the file. So it is provided as a reference only at this point. We can always revisit that in the future as the contractors might get more used to the DGN files and what files contain what. But those 3D line string files line strings can be scattered across several different files, and it might not always be a quarter file. So you guys know it best. So if you guys generate that file up front, it makes everything a lot easier. Yeah. So for 3D line strings, we'll be providing a CADD file. Why not use XMLs? So for the 3D line strings, to export all those individual lines to XMLs might be a little tedious, and you got a lot of XML files everywhere. Now, yes, you can select them all and export, but it's not really a needed step. Honestly, I think it'd be easier to create the 3D line string file than that, but that is debatable. But the contractors can read in that DGN data. I really would like to get to the point where we're not using all these different file formats, right? So we're doing DGen to get to the contractor. I don't want to say, oh, here's an XML file, here's the gen file from the Geopack days. I really want to keep everything down the source, but the problem with the DGen file and the contractor reading them in right now is it can't read in that stationing data. So that's really the main driver force of why we're still using len XMLs for the alignments, but we're not really needing to go to that level for the 3D line strings. Ideally, in the future, as we get more into this BIM world and iModels, maybe in the future, that is what we will use. As I don't view this as the end goal. I don't want to take our stuff and break it apart just to send it to them to put it back together, right? That's what we're trying to get away from. We're not quite there just yet. We're making those steps, but I do think the end goal would be IFC or an iModel where they can just read that in. It has all the data and less work on us. I will say the IFCs are nowhere near ready for this. So if you guys are banking on that anytime soon, I already tried to have contractors pull in the IFC data and it didn't go too well. So it's not like we haven't looked at that and moving forward. So I know that I kind of went down a rabbit hole with this question, but there are more things coming as we move forward with technology. But here's kind of where we're at as we are progressing towards that end goal of possibly an iModel or IFC, where you could just take all your DGen data, create your connectors, and just publish them or upload them to the web. And there it is. And every time you have an update, you're just republishing that. So it's close. It's just not. We made a lot of progress. We're just not there yet at the end goal. So there will be more changes coming until we get to there. But I think we're at a good spot right here. We're working with the contractors, trying to figure out what's the best way to provide the data. And that's where we're at today. So we will keep meeting with them and keep looking at the software as things progress and update.
This one got a lot of likes.
Oh man, 5 likes.
Kind of the elephant.
Yeah, I kind of figured the 3D line string was going to be the, I guess, the main point of contention here. The 3D line strings bring up the question of how detailed do models need to be. From past conversations with contractors, extreme detailing of drives, culvert head walls, etc. Other detailed grading areas are not beneficial to them. If we model as much as we need for the cross-section sheets to look correct, is there a liability of providing 3D strings? So that is why I mentioned it a couple times. Right now, all this data we are providing to the contractors is a reference only. It's not contractual. It's not legally binding. So we're just providing it to them to help them, but they still have to do their due diligence to back check it and with the actual contract doc, which would be the plans, which I'll kind of mention that at the end, our next user group meeting, we are planning to kind of go into more detail on that side. So I'm not going to tell you now because I want you to stay till the end. So I'll mention that there at the end. But yeah, I think that's always been the concern about providing data, is engineering data, is what's legally binding, what if it's not the same as the plans. And that's why for now it is reference only, but we are working towards model as a legal document. So we're not there yet. Don't like scream at me. I do think we are still pretty far off from that, but we are starting pilots on that side, and other states are already done several pilots and moved towards that. So as we get to that, we're going to get to the point where we're going to have to be comfortable with what's modeled is what's contracted. Now, there is the huge question of level development, which we are still tackling, which I think every state is still trying to come up with that. The best thing right now is kind of engineering judgment, right? Obviously, grading around the head wall takes a lot of work, especially on the inlet or outlet side of it, that the contractors probably won't use that well. So yeah, that's an area that probably doesn't need that higher level of development. So we're still going through. We're looking at what other states are doing on that front. It's definitely a big initiative for the next year here about how we're going to define that level of development and provide that more concrete, bullet point list of what is expected to be modeled and how detailed should it be modeled is definitely a hard question to answer. Are proposed surfaces required? This could cause conflicts with the line string data. So proposed surfaces are not required right now. I just mentioned that, you know, if you did generate some kind of proposed area, that it wouldn't hurt to export that out as a line XML. But by no means are we saying you have to go through and generate this final proposed surface at this point in time. So hopefully that clarifies that question. Is project ITL file under 990 being included in the zip file? Yes. So that's part. So the 990 Workspace standards folder, it's grayed out, it's checked on automatically, and I'm just pulling in everything from there. So all those files in there are going to automatically get included. So that's including the ITL file. That includes if you have a PSET file set up, the DTY file, if you ended up creating a custom coordinate system, will be in there. The seed files. You know, really, I want all that data come with it. So yes, it is being included. Is there anything in the L&D guides talking about usage of PDOT page number? I've heard it referenced in a couple CAD videos, but haven't been able to find any documentation on it. So I doubt that it's in L&D. I can double check, but I'm pretty sure it's in our CAD manual. I'm fairly confident that we put it in there when we went to connect. I guess a little background on that and why the PDOT is there is when we went to connect, you know, we were looking at things that we can do to improve processes or open the door for things down the line. And one of the things with page numbers is if we make it unique by adding a PDOT to that page, that gives you a unique string of text that you can search for. If it's just one or two, how many times does that show up on a quantity somewhere or a number across your whole sheet? So if you wanted to search your plan for cross references to page 2 in the PDF, you can type in P.2 and it's going to tell you everywhere it shows up. So it's an easy way to find things. There's also batch capabilities in Bluebeam where you can tell it to batch link anywhere that finds this text string, you know, create a link to that page. So there's those functionalities are there. So we thought when we went to connect, we would start doing that and add that prefix to the number to open up those capabilities and not go, oh crap, you know, down the line when we're ready to do something, you know, along those automation lines. Oh, but we didn't set it up to do that. So there might be some stragglers out there that don't have these prefixes on there. But really, at the end of the day, that's why we did it. Making that unique string on that page number, make it easier to search for it if you're going to do any kind of batch processing and things like that. So hopefully that explains kind of our thought process and why we went that route. So what that means is you wouldn't put it on the page total, like you just put it on the page number. So P.1 of, you know, 200. If you did P.200, then it would show up on every single page when you search for that page. Have externals been giving access to the reference files folder in 600 contracts in order to place the CAD files, or is it ODOT supposed to copy over the files? So I can double check, Brandon's not here, but I'm pretty sure that 600 contracts folder is still locked out to externals. I guess we can look into that, but I kind of want to leave that to the ODOT PM. So you could throw it in, you know, the admin, the shared admin folder if you're working in our data source. If you're not, obviously you can put it wherever you want to submit to us. But yeah, I think right now, if you are working in our data source, I don't think you have edit access to that location. So just put it either in your reviews folder or wherever you want to keep it. You can work out with that with the districts, and I can revisit that with Brandon. We can take a look at it. Maybe it's something we open up, but I'm real hesitant to do that just because there are a lot of things that run on that folder structure, and especially for bidders. So I'm a little hesitant to just open that up because I want to make sure that stuff goes in there. It's supposed to go in there. So I'll leave that one at that. Do right-of-way files get submitted as part of the overall project package or separately upon completion of the right-of-way plan submittal. Does this change depending on who performs work? Same for firm, subconsultant. Okay, so the right-of-way files, as in the DGN, if you're submitting that separately, you're gonna create a zip file for that. Same thing goes for survey. If you're gonna do just the survey work and you're submitting it, the zip file is gonna be that easy way to submit that data and an easy way for us to import that data. So I don't know if I answered that question exactly what you were asking, but when it comes time for the DGN files, when you're submitting that, I'm not expecting you to submit the DGN files like every single submission you make, like stage 1, stage 2, like that's, you're probably safe with just submitting at the end. I mean, if you wanted to give us the data earlier, that's fine. And then, the import process that I still have yet to set up for all the internal people that are wondering when is this, that's the second piece. The first part was the zip creator. The second piece is an importer for our internal staff to import that data. So that's not done just yet, but I would say at stage 3 or end of submission is when we're kind of wanting that zip file data. But part of the import process will be to choose to overwrite our previous import. So it's not that in the world if you send it in more than once as changes happen. If mini files are for reference only, should that be identified in the project index, or is it already in the contract doc? So when it generates the zip file, I forgot to mention this, it will place a README text file directly in the zip file, indicating that it is reference only, but it also isn't listed as a contract doc. So there's no real way to confuse that to be a contract doc. It's in a reference only folder. When it gets posted to the bidders, it's in a reference only folder. It's not listed as part of contract documents. So if there's concern there, I don't think you need to worry about that. It's hopefully pretty obvious that it's not a contract doc and shouldn't be construed as something that is contract doc. I've also been very clear to the contractors on that side as well. FYI, the PDOT for sheet numbers doesn't fit in the ODOT bridge cell for section marks and sheet references.
Subset number, I think.
So the subset number, I guess to clarify, the PDOT would be for the overall number, not for the subset number. Because that's the unique identifier. But that block should be the same size. So in the subset in the sheet, so maybe we're talking about something else.
We can follow up.
We can follow up.
I
but
think I know what she's talking about.
Yeah, in the bottom corner, I know it fits, but there's other places we have to update. Then we can look at that and make appropriate updates. So thanks for pointing that out. Okay, I think we are just a little bit over time, but good questions. I figured this was going to go over, so hopefully, I know the 30 line strings was going to be the biggest heartburn here. Hopefully we've clarified kind of our reasonings behind it. So with that, we will move on to the next topic, which will be digital signatures. So we're just going to deliver all the grumblings at once, right? So digital signatures, I'm sure everyone's heard about it. It's probably been the main topic of everyone's conversations here. So we already did 2 webinars on this and provided documentation. So I'm not going to rehash like the full demonstration of digital signatures. But I do want to bring up kind of a summary, and I was going to have Adam come up and kind of go over quick workflows. But we do have some things already changing about this. So I did want to kind of bring those up and let you know those changes, what they are, when they're coming. So first, let's just start off with the goal of digital signatures, why we're doing this. The goal has always been to become compliant, especially with the state board. So it's pretty clearly written for the state board requirements. If you're going to sign electronically, it needs to be a digital signature. So there I highlighted the portion, the paragraph from the Ohio Administrative Code inside the state board section that goes over this. So really saying that it needs to have some kind of authentication attached to it. It needs to break if changes were made. It needs to be under the sole control of the signee, capable of verification. So kind of hopefully everyone, I think in layman's terms, is basically saying if you're going to sign it, you better do digital signature. So that's what we've been trying to get to. And really, this is really pertinent only to engineers and surveying, because it's in the chapter for them and your use of your seal and how you're going to digitally sign. So it's a quick summary, and here's where one of the changes that has already been made. So the summary is that we want to digitally sign all sealed signatures. All non-sealed signatures, we're not so much concerned about. They're not actually signing off on any of the design of that plan. So what we're doing is before this, when we originally rolled this out, we said that the DDD, the District Deputy Director signature, is also going to be digital signature. So that would be the only exception to non-seals not needing digitally signed. So that has changed. So instead of the DDD signature needing to be a digital signature, the District Deputy Directors kind of came back together, and they all kind of concluded that it would be better to not have them have digital signatures, and we can relay the message that digital signatures are for seals. So they were the only exception. So I know that kind of goes against what we've been saying in all the previous webinars. So it is a recent change. We're going to update this in the July 2023 DRC update. So you'll see that change coming forward. So basically what that gives us the ability to say is that digital signatures are for signatures that have seals attached to them. So what does that mean for the non-signatures? So the only signatures that aren't seals that are going to be on the plan is going to be the directors and the district deputy directors. And those are going to be graphics now. You just place them in the DGN, and then that's it. You don't have to sign them. They're just graphics. They're not digital signatures or anything like that. All right, so Adam will kind of go over that in a little bit more detail, but I wanted to kind of bring that change up to let everyone know. And I think now, well, I don't think, now I have to go back and update all of our videos and documentation to remove that piece about saying that the DDD signature should be a digital signature. So we're going to go through and update that. Again, it's going to go into effect July. So we'll go and update all of our documentation and remake the videos. And then I was going to hold another webinar to kind of hopefully just clean up this whole process and clarify anything. So what does that mean? It means for your PE and PS signatures, it doesn't mean you can hand sign it. That doesn't mean an e-signature. It doesn't mean an image. It means a digital signature. The only exception to this is going to be the centerline plat sheets on your right-of-way. And the reason being is because those get recorded with the county, and you have to follow the county requirements. And I'm pretty sure that none of them accept digital signatures. So in that sense, they can't submit to the county to be recorded, which is required unless they are hand signing them. So for the right-of-way plat sheets, to clarify, that's not the legend sheet. That's just the plat sheets. Is the only exception to seals needing to be digitally signed. So for those ones, you're going to print it out, hand sign it, send it off to the county, right? And then you will scan that back in as the copy to include in your plan set. Everywhere else, still using digital signatures. And in the future, if we can ever, get the counties to accept digital signatures, I envision that changing. But for now, that's where we're left off with. With that, I should also say that the digital signatures on your plan sets should be valid in the sense that after they are placed, the document hasn't been changed. All right, so a quick summary. I kind of went over a little bit of it. The right-of-way plans have been separated to their own PDF. So we're separating that plan set into separate PDF documents to help with the digital signature process, right? If you make a change to the right-of-way or the roadway plans, that document changed. Anyone that signed that document now has to re-sign it. So we separated the right-of-way out so you didn't also have to go get the right-of-way to re-sign it. With it being a separate doc, you change the one, it doesn't affect the other. That's the main reason why the right-of-way has been split out. That is not the case for geotech. Geotech is still part of the plan set and is included in the page numbering. If you change your geotech, it will cause you to re-sign that PDF. So I just want to be clear on that. So with the right-of-way plans being separated, we removed the total. So you're only going to have the subset numbering. Kind of part, you don't always know the sheet numbering when you're generating the plan set. So getting rid of that alleviates that document needing to be updated when you actually know the final number count. So it's no longer going to be included in the overall page numbering of your plan set, but you still need to include it on your title sheet. It's still a part of the plan set. So in your index, you should still be listing that you have right away. Then let's see here. So then with that, we want to still be able to submit or provide these documents together, right? If you have a right-of-way in its own PDF, the roadway as another PDF, how do you send that out? So the way we're going to keep that together is we're going to make it into a PDF package or portfolios, what it's also called as. And you can picture this as just a zip file with a PDF file extension. So it's a way to add these separate PDFs, keep them together as one PDF document. So when you open that PDF portfolio, you will see all of the individual PDFs. So that way we can keep them together. So that is something that you will have to do, create that PDF package. That is your plan set. That is what gets filed. The only thing I haven't mentioned is we also separated all the non-sealed signatures off to its own page. So those are like city signatures. So basically anything that's not being sealed, but they want their signature on the sheet to maybe approve of something or say I acknowledge. So we don't really need to get those re-signed. Those don't need to be digital signatures. We don't want them breaking the engineering or surveying seals just by signing it. So we just separated all those off to a separate sheet, which you also will include in that PDF package. So you can have three PDFs for your PDF plan set, right? The signature sheet, the main plans, and then the right-of-way plans. If you have multi-part stuff, you're still going to have one PDF package. You would just include all those different PDF parts in your PDF package. So it kind of makes it nice because now we have one PDF that contains all of the pages or the sheets. You'll just end the name of those with part 1, part 2, whatever. So that's really the quick summary of the changes that have happened to get us to digital signatures and some of the reasoning. Now the win, hopefully you guys all know, back in January, we had the DRC update that kind of implemented this. The guidelines for electronic deliverables, which I mentioned earlier, has the plan set requirements where it talks about what to name the individual files inside that portfolio. So I won't go over that. So hopefully that clarifies some of the overall changes, the why and the when. So I wanted Adam to come up here and just kind of quickly go over a little bit of the process of how to achieve digital signatures, and then we'll move on. The wiki page is online that goes over in more detail. So, oh, yep. So the question is, how should the right-of-way sheets be called out on the index? So we'll have to provide, I guess, official guidance on that. I think we've been going back and forth from listing the sub. I think the way we're going to go is listing the sub number range. So RW.01 to whatever page number it is. But it could be the other way to go is just to call out that there are right-of-ways. So we'll put that in, I guess, an official document somewhere, but Way I'm leaning is to list that subset numbering range in your index. Because I want to be clear that it is still part of the plan set. It's just not included in the overall numbering. It's still a part. That's why it's a sub number, not an overall number.
So now I'm just going to go through some of the steps needed to make sure that the following digital signature process is done correctly. So most of the projects now being submitted are going to need digital signatures. So just some of the steps that you're going to want to go through when placing either a new interior cell or updating the existing plans that are going to be submitted after this date, basically. So just some of the steps that we've made changes to are the director's signature cell, as you can see here, which is actually not a digital signature, it's going to be a graphic. And as JD stated earlier, we've changed the district deputy director's signatures field to a cell now, and also placing seals using the plan signature application. And we're also going to be moving all local officials or city officials that have been signing on the title sheet to its own separate signature sheet, which I'll also go over that in another slide. Here's some of the examples of where we've made the changes. So as you can see here, the district deputy director used to have a signature field, and now is going to be placed as a cell, basically the same as what the director's signature was. And you're going to be using this application here, the plan signature application. So as you can see here on the right, if you haven't configured the project's configuration file correctly, which is going to be shown in this video here, you'll get that error code when you go to place a seal before you've configured that file. So I'm just going to briefly go over how to place a title sheet and place a engineering seal. So as you can see here, we've placed the new title sheet cell. If you look down here at the right, we've added up to 6 digitally signed seals here for engineers. And then we've also added an additional 2 here on the left. And as you can see, this version of the title sheet has the signature cell field here for the district deputy director, which is now going to be offered as a cell. And then you'll also notice here that we have added the director's signature here as a cell as well, which is a little slow. So now I've gone over that overall layout of the title sheet. I'm going to briefly go over how the workflow goes for placing an engineering seal with a signature field. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the ODOT workflow up here at the left. And we're going to select the apps tab and then go to the sheets section and then go to title sheet drop down and select plan signatures. And as you see here, we have the application. There's 2 selections up at the top here. There's the engineering seals and the signature seals tab, which that one's going to be offered for the local officials and city officials, which we'll cover that in another slide. You'll also notice that we have a couple toggles here at the top for the engineering seals, the survey seals, and the landscape architect seals. So you'll notice when you click through these that the landscape architect seals and the engineering seals are very similar. The main difference here is the landscape architect seal is slightly bigger than the engineering seal. And we recommend don't use the subtitle with the landscape architect seal because there'll be some text overlap issues. So I'm going to briefly touch on the survey seals tab or toggle as well in this, but you'll notice we've added the company name there, which we'll also cover that in another slide later. So let's go back to the engineering seal, and I'm just going to touch on the title here. It has a drop down. It can also be a custom field, but in most cases you're probably just going to select the discipline that you're signing for. So in this case I'm going to select the roadway. And the subtitle, this is going to be best used for the FSN number or the project designation, right? So in this case, I'm going to use the county route and then SLM. And you'll notice we have a name 1, which is going to be your first name, and then name 2, which is either going to be your middle initial or your last name if you don't have a middle initial. But in my case, we're going to do middle initial and last name for name 3. And then you'll go ahead and place the license number as it states there. And also, I just want to quickly touch on the scale by. This is going to be used mostly for your right-of-way disciplines. We'll cover that as well in another slide. And now if you look at the place location, so what that drop down does is it changes the insertion point of the engineering cell. So the left would be to the right of the sheet, and then bottom right will be to the left, as you can see here. And then I'm briefly going to touch on the save current values and what that does. So what that's doing is it's saving all of those fields that you filled out, and it's saving that to your user preferences or user profile. And I'm also calling that out here at the bottom to show you where that's saving it to. So if you were to accidentally close that, it'll be there for the next time you need to sign a plan. So after that, I'm just going to briefly tell you what happens when you click the place seal there. So what that's actually doing is it's writing to the design script, which is located under the 990 works at standards under plot DRV, right? So every time you place one of those, it's placing a new dynamic cell, as I'll briefly glance at here. And this is also why when you click that, it actually takes a little bit to write that to the design script. As you see there, it was highlighted in pink. That's the dynamic GUID cell that's being written to this design script here. Okay, so I hopefully that helps. But as I could say here, when we post this PowerPoint, you can go back and take a look at this if you need to for the videos. So signature sheet. So as you can see, there was the tab next to the engineering seals that was being offered there in the plan signature application. So when you go to place these are going to be a gu.dgn file. They're going to be 8.5 by 11 size sheets, and the numbering is going to be separate from your overall plan set, right? So it's going to be 1 of 1 or 1 of 2, depending on how many signatures you're going to need for city officials. So, and also kind of want to really touch on that, like if you need to place these before you print these out, or if you need to print these out for someone that needs to sign these, and if there's digital signatures there, they're going to break, right? Because this application is placing those signature fields. So just note that if you need to do that, someone needs to re-sign that as they bring that back in. You can place those manually, right? Which we'll go over that as well. And also if this is needed for your project, you're gonna want to specify that on your title sheet as I'm showing here, as non-sealed signatures need to be or shown on the signature PDF. Right-of-way sheets. JD kind of already touched on this a little bit, so I'm just going to briefly go through this. Overall sheet numbering, as you can see here, we're removing that. Subset prefix is going to be right-of-way dot whatever. And then you're also going to want to call this out on your title sheet, right? Which we also commented on that earlier for a question that we had. Placing seals, you're going to also want to use the plan signature application on those for right-of-way. And we're also going to cover the right-of-way center plat on the next slide. So we're still going to want everybody to use the certification paragraph on the center line, or the legend sheet, sorry. The only difference here is we're requiring you to use the engineering seal cell here instead of the filling out of the line, signature line that was previously offered. And also, I also touched on the company name is being offered for the engineering seal here for the plan signature application. And the center line plat, it's going to be hand signed, right? So you're going to print this out. In most cases, you're going to want to do this at half size, so 11 by 17. And in that case, you're going to want to use the scale by, you want to scale that by 2, right? And before you do make the PDF and print, you're going to want to delete the cell here being shown because it'll be too big, basically. Printing. So printing is going to be kind of tricky for some people, I guess, but printing, you're going to want to make sure that this is set within your printing file, or else you're not going to get that signature field within your PDFs. So that's definitely something you really want to make sure that you have that set first. Also, you're going to want to use Bluebeam Review or Adobe Pro to manually enter your digital signature fields. As I'm showing here, this one's the Bluebeam one, and then there's actually more of a process for Adobe Pro, right? You have to create a actual form first. So the reason I bring that up is because in V8i, the .d script is not supported for creating these fields here being shown in this picture. So if you've got projects that are being submitted using V8i, you're going to want to use the manual process, which we do offer the videos for those here also within this presentation. Signing digitally. Okay, so when you're digitally signing these, you most probably will receive a engineer seal that needs to be signed, right? So you're going to click on that signature field within that PDF, and then you'll get prompted with this, which is being shown in Bluebeam Review, right? So it's slightly different on Adobe Pro or Adobe. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to want to set up your engineering digital seal, right? So, or signature. You're going to go to the new button here, and you're going to create a new ID, or your organization might already have an ID set up for you. And in that case, you'd skip that, and then you'd go down here and create an appearance, and by clicking new or going into the preferences and doing that. And then once you've done that, you click OK, and then it'll be prompted to save the file with your signature in there. And we've got some videos shown here as well. The construction plan set. This is where we're getting a lot of comments on where people are having issues with how should I name my PDFs, right? So in this case, shown in red is what we're wanting the names to be, right, when you're submitting these. The signature page is going to be signatures.pdf, which not every project is going to require that, so we're not looking for that one in most cases, but if your project requires it, you should submit it. The plan set, which is going to incorporate your roadway, your geotech, and then your soil profiles, if they have them. And then also you've got your plan right away PDF, right, which is its own separate thing too. So a PDF package and portfolio. So what is that? So what that is basically like a zip file, right? The only thing that's different is for PDFs. It only holds PDFs, and it's a PDF format. And we're just briefly kind of showing you in both PDF softwares here how to create one. So it's in most cases file, create, PDF portfolio, or PDF package. We've also got some videos on those too. We're currently updating these to have a little bit more information in there, so that helps the users understand that. All right, so verifying and submitting to central office. This is another section that we get a lot of questions on. Seems to be a tricky subject for a lot of people. So really what we're looking for here is we're looking for if the document has been modified after being signed. So if we look down here at the left in the white, we'll notice that there's a comment after this person has signed it that there have been subsequent changes to the document. Now, if you receive a file with these signatures and you get that comment, you need to send that back to that person to re-sign the document. Which being what we're really looking for is in the gray here, that there have not been any changes or modifications to this document after being signed, right? So this is what we really want before you submit this. All right, so renaming the plan set. this is another one. So it's the package portfolio name, right? So currently it's depending on the type of submission that it is. So initial, pre-addendum, addendum. This is all according to this document here, the project submission procedure. This is linked within this, so I strongly suggest taking a look at this file before submitting. Okay, resources. It's basically what we're suggesting is this is our one-stop shop for everything digital signatures and any kind of submitting documentation, right? So first, let's take a look at the project submission overview. So what this incorporates is basically all the documents and videos for making this submission via ProjectWise, right? So this is mostly for our internal folks. And then we've got guidelines for electronic digital deliverables, and this is the PDF plan set. This is going to house all of the documentation that's required for renaming and the naming convention for this document, right? And then the digital signature overview. So what this is basically a walkthrough for all of our videos and all the digital signatures and the process that it is for that. And I strongly suggest taking a look at our FAQ doc, because there's a lot of questions in there that we've already answered, and it's a pretty good resource for everybody. So now I'm going to pass this back off to JD, and he's got a really exciting announcement to make here. So
Well,
enjoy.
Before we get to that, just to for internal users on digital signatures, one of the biggest things I've noticed is the filing name of the plan set. So there's been a little bit of confusion around that, so I wanted to clarify that. So the electronic design deliverables document has a section on the plan set, and it goes over, what the names are for each of those individual PDFs inside that portfolio, right? And then it gives you guidance on what to name that overall PDF package, which is the plan set. It is what gets filed. But the name, when you file it, is dependent on the type of submission. So not really so much for externals, because they're not, the submission, the filing to central office is done by the ODOT district PM. But when you do that submission, the name, if it's an initial file, if it's a pre-addendum, or if it's addendum, the name of that PDF package changes. So when you go to make your filing or to file an addendum or a pre-addendum, make sure you're following that naming convention and not leaving it that initial name. And there's a paragraph right under that section of the electronic design deliverables guideline that says that. It says, note, depending on the type of submission, the name will be dependent, and it links to the document. And that document is an internal document, since it goes over the filing process, which is only done internally. So it doesn't make sense to have it out there for externals. But I see that the most now since we've implemented. All I see is that original name, and that's not what we want. You're supposed to put the date, the PID, as filed or as revised at the end of it when you're making those submissions. So please give that document a look over and make sure you're naming those correctly. There are automated processes in ProjectWise that name does affect. So I am getting emails daily to say everything I can't find, and going through and trying to clean it up. So eventually here we'll start kind of reaching back out to the people, not naming it, but we did a little bit of a soft launch here. So take a look at those documents, guys, and make sure you're filing them correctly. You also don't need to file the individual PDFs with the PDF package. I see that a lot too. The PDF package is all of those PDFs combined, so it doesn't make sense to also deliver them separately. All right, so I think we answered most of the questions on digital signatures. I'm a little hesitant to open the door up to questions, but are there any questions? I know it's a sticky subject. Hopefully you guys get why we're doing it. It's something that had to be done. Maybe in the future we can refine that process. But at the end of the day, it's really just digitally signing. If you change the document, you got to re-sign it. There's no way to capture the big changes without also capturing the small changes. So I get changing a page number sucks to go get get the signatures again, but we can't capture those design changes. We want to make sure the engineer is aware of the changes being made and then re-signs on those changes. So if anything, it's really just protecting your seal at the end of the day. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. The process overall is pretty easy. I do want to add, we did set up a whole process like with the printing. So you place your seals, it creates that field. When you print, the signature field is there. If you don't want to follow that, you don't have to. When you open the PDF, you can place a signature field just the same. So don't feel like, oh, I can't get the printing to work. I'm not doing it right. At the end of the day, it's just a digital signature field in the PDF that you're clicking to sign. You can create that through the printing process, or you can create that in Bluebeam or Adobe. But at the end of the day, that's all you need. You need that signature field, and you just need to sign it. So hopefully that summarizes it up. That wiki page has a wealth of knowledge. Again, with that DDD change, we'll be ramping all the videos and the documentation, and then I'll probably hold another webinar just to hopefully clear up everything and all the changes that were made. The main change is just that DDD signature. One of the questions that came in was, how do we get those DDD graphics? So we're working on making them right now. That decision to switch to graphics rather than digital signatures for those district deputy directors just happened last week. So we don't have all their signatures created into cells just yet. So we're in that process for the next 2 weeks. We're going to be gathering all those signatures, creating the cells, and then we will release it. But that update with the DDD change is going with the July DRC update. So we'll make sure we get those out before then. Okay. So what everyone's waiting for, right? I tried to entice you guys a little bit to come. This has been a change that a lot of people have asked for, and I kept pushing it off. So I figured, what better way to announce it than after we go over electronic design deliverables and digital signatures, right? It's a perfect time to also say, hey, here's this. So sheet manager updates. One of the biggest, I think, requests have been that this takes too long to load. And part of it was the nature of how it loads. You know, it's loading every sheet. It doesn't know what sheet exists until it reads that DGN file, right? A DGN file can have 5 sheets in it. So how am I going to list those 5 sheets if I don't read that file? So the nature of how it was set up forces the application to basically read all of the DGN files in sheet folders and find all that data. So it on a big project, it does take a lot longer to load. So I have updated it to give another option. So I'll play the video and kind of roll through it with you guys. So it's still going to be the same button, same location, how you launch it. But when you first launch it, you're going to be giving 2 options. One to load it the way it's been loading, and another option to just read it. So here it is. I get that it looks crappy. You know, I only had a couple of days to do this, so I just put 2 buttons on there. So maybe I'll come back and make it look a little better. It's 2 buttons when you launch now instead of launching directly into the loading sequence, which takes forever. So the 1 button on the right shows the way, read the DGen files. On the left, it's a Excel file. So this video is a little old. Did add a little message above it to say select an option below. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over this from Excel file and how it works. So this can use your existing index files that you've already exported out. I'll show you how you can create one. Save. But when you click it, it's going to ask. So here's an example of one that's exported out. So when you use this application to export out a file, you get something like this. Basically list all that sheet title block data along the right side of the sheet. So install that data in here, and you can come in here and bulk edit it, right? So each line is its own sheet. So it really comes down to the model, because we have 1 sheet per model. So it lists the file name and then the model name. Those 2 columns are the minimum requirement for the region, right? You have to have at least those 2 columns filled out, and that'll be an entry in the index or app once it loads. So If you're filling this out and you want to fill it out manually instead of exporting it out and you're in ProjectWise, the path is listed here. It's everything without the red. So if you want what to fill in for that path, if you wanted to create that index file manually from just your knowledge, so you don't have to read through it all, path is moving the data source name, starting with the document. If you're outside, then it'll just be the path. Right? The model name, just everything else is extra data that's not required. So again, what I'm getting to is the minimum that I need to make this app work. So I'm going to click that button, and it's going to prompt up and say, hey, what index file do you want me to read in? So this would be the file that you list all of the dgen files and model names. It has all the extra data, that's good too. So after you select it, it reads it all in. So I did not read the dgen data, right? So you get to this point without having to wait for, which I think is what everybody wanted, right? That comes with a couple caveats, right? When I click on it, I haven't read that dgen yet, right? So I'm only going to show you the data that you put in that Excel. If you have none of those parameters, properties listed, then obviously I don't know what to show. So I added a verify button, refresh, right? I have to read that data. I have to read that file at some time, right? Hold on, we're losing audio. Pause for a second. I know I'm just leaving you guys in suspense, right? But we're gonna switch the batteries out on this mic. That again too. All right. All right. So is that audio doing better for you guys online? Hopefully. Switch the batteries out there. All right. Oh, the video kept playing. Let me go back. All right. So I'm listing only what I read in. I'll go over that Excel file again too. So at some point I gotta verify. At some point, you know, I read that data to know that cell even exists in the file. That to show you the correct properties, right? So once you hit the verify button, you'll notice the button will disappear on the file because it's been verified now. So that cell, that sheet verified, I read the dgen file, populated it with the data, and now you're good to go. So I added a verify all button if you wanted to. Still would be faster than the old way loading because I'm only going to look at the sheets listed, right? The old way would list at all the dgen sheets no matter what. So that would still help you in your load times a little bit. And then while I was at it, I made a refresh button. So if you want to go refresh the values from the dgen file, there it is as well. Okay. So, is it choppy again? All right. I'll try to talk really close. Here, I'll move this up. Maybe I'm just not close enough to it, right? Just moving around too much. So it overall works the same way. The main difference is so that's where the verify button comes in. So if you do bulk import, so that initial read doesn't change any of the updated values in that Excel file and you write it in. That's just going to list it here. Actually, update the dgen file. You still have to follow the same. Excel, choose your Excel file, and it would input it in and update the dgen file. Just like when you do that bulk import, it will force the validation. I have to validate the file before I can update the caveat. So hopefully this is, I guess you guys are happy with this addition. I think it'll save you guys a lot of time. Now, in terms of that Excel file, if you have, run this old way first, wait for it to do an Excel export. then you have that starting. If you don't, all you need is those first two columns, file name and model. Just populate that however you want. Files and the model names, save it, and then hit the verify button and export out the current data. So this video goes over that. There's audio. I posted to our wiki page. But really, that's all it comes down to, that verify button, and then I have a push button as well. So initially read in that file from the startup. Don't have that data listed. You just have the first two columns. It's going to be missing until you hit the verify button. Now the verify button will still leave the values you had in your Excel file, right? The refresh button is what will get the values from the DGN file. I don't want you to lose that data that you wanted to bring in, right? So if you want to do like individual update, it would read in those values, and then you could hit, the update button. So to I guess clarify, the refresh button just reads the DGN file and gives you the right properties. It doesn't actually read the property values from the DGN file, because I'm assuming you want what's listed in the Excel file. Once you hit the refresh button, that's when it will go and say, okay, I'm going to update these property values with whatever is in the DGN file. Hopefully that makes sense. And I go over that in the video too. If the verification fails, it will tell you in the bottom. It'll be red in the results. It'll say, I couldn't find this model name, or there's no sheet that exists on this model, so there's nothing to update. It'll just keep staying there, and you can't really do anything with it because there's no cell to update. It doesn't have to be a cell; it can be dropped, but it'll still find it. So that's what I wanted to show as a surprise enhancement. So I will be releasing this next week with a bunch of other updates that we have. So please don't email me today asking for it. Give me a couple days to get it pushed out. But by all means, you guys put it through the ringer and let me know if it's working or not. But I did go through a bunch of tests, and it does seem to be working. So it wasn't the ideal solution, but it was the solution that I had enough time to implement for you guys. So figured I'd do something like this after delivering the bad news of electronic design deliverables and digital signatures, right? So a little pick me up. So yeah, it's not posted yet because I wanted to save the announcement for this meeting, but yes, I will post the video. It'll be on the page that goes over that application. So that it's already made. I just haven't posted it. So I will post that, and you can watch the video that goes through how to use it with audio and goes through the ins and outs, goes through the details of the column names and what they need to be named for it to work and whatnot. So any other questions?
No, there's still some audio issues.
Audio issues. All right, sorry guys, we're right at the end. We'll be posting the recording as well here. Hopefully by the end of today or tomorrow, I'll post it as well. So the last topic here is just some closing remarks and some open discussion for anyone that wants to bring up topics. So before we get to that, one thing I wanted to ask for is a call for presenters. So if you guys want to show off some cool things you did with your modeling, we want to try to do that at a next user group meeting in the future. So here's a link to a form. I think Kyle already posted it in the chat. There's a QR code if you guys can scan it. But if you guys are interested, you think you got a cool model, that'd be cool to show off. We want you to show it off and present it to everyone else and see some cool things that we can do with ORD. We did something like this, I think, a couple of years ago. We had people coming in and showing things. So we want this user group to try to be more than just us come up here and preaching. So I think this would be a cool way to do it. So feel free to, if you have something, to fill that out and let us know. We can reach out to you guys and see if we can put it on the next agenda or not. With that, I'm putting out a call for completed ORD plans for use in sample plans. So here's another form. If you guys have a completed ORD design plan set, a PDF with the DGN files that you think might be suitable to maybe do a portion of a sample plan, not saying it has to be the entire sample plan. If you look at our current sample plan, it's obviously a combination of several different plans, and that's how we made the sample plans in the past. We took projects that were completed to build it, so it's a little bit harder to create the sample plans for RD since we didn't really have a vast amount of projects to pull from. So now we've been into it for a while, so we're just asking if you guys have something you think would be good, shoot it our way, and we can look at bringing it into the sample plans in our process that we're doing right now to kind of update the sample plans for RD. I know it comes up a lot of questions, but we're still at a work in progress. So there's that form as well. So a couple updates. Matt already alluded to the new mailing list. We're switching to a new system. So look for communication that in the next couple months. What we decide to do. We're either going to port our current list over or just send out an email to our current list and saying, hey, if you still want to be on our list, click this link and sign up again. But haven't decided that yet. We're still there. There was a meeting today about it, which we missed. I think there's a meeting next week that we'll go to see more of the details of that switch over. But the current system is just pretty ancient, so it's a welcomed switch over. Our next user group meeting is going to be June 28th. And so we already started working on that agenda. We're going to bring in a contractor, modeler, to give their perspective. So kind of to piggyback off of the electronic design deliverables that we talked about today, we're going to have this person come in and kind of give them more of their perspective of why they need why they want these types of files, how they're going through their workflow, kind of give that perspective to maybe as designers to think about that as we're going through our design. How does that affect the contractor? Why would they need that? Why should I do it this way? So I think it'll be a good presentation. I think it'll be great for the design side to hear that kind of side of things. So look forward to that in the next user group meeting. So mark your calendars. June 28th will be that next one. So obviously I do not have registration open for that. So it'll be a couple months before I send out that email. So with that, I think we got like 15 minutes left. I was going to kind of open the floor up for some discussion, try to get some interaction. This is not a complaint fest. I'll just start off with that. More of an open discussion. If you guys have questions about things, we got a little bit of time left. I figure we can try to answer some more questions. So if not, you don't have to stick around. If you guys don't want to stick around, feel free. But that is our meeting today. We'll go over these topics here in a second. But I want to thank everyone for coming. Appreciate sticking around and listening to us. We have a saved question. Are there any updates on using GeoPack migration outside of ProjectWise? There are some already waiver projects still not yet sold and are under construction developed with these products. So that's more of an internal question, since externals, they can use GeoPack inside or outside of ProjectWise, but we are not currently haven't made any decisions on those old GeoPack projects and moving them into ProjectWise. That it was one of the thought processes, but nothing has been decided on that front. So those projects are still going to be done outside of ProjectWise. So there's more to come on that. We're hoping that we're getting towards the end of those GeoPack projects, but obviously there's going to become some straggling on. So worst case scenario, if GeoPack ever does break, you could still open those DGN files in Connect. You just can't use the GeoPack functionality. All right, so some of those extra tools would be turning into more manual efforts. So if you have the plan mostly done, that's not so bad. So I don't know if I answered that question. I guess I don't have a clear answer on that for internal users. We haven't really made any official determination on all those outlying projects. If we want to move those into ProjectWise, so we have a real number of what's left or whatnot. But for right now, it's status quo on that side.
Hey, JD, this is Eric. I asked that question so it's not broke, there's no concerns with
Page numbers on the signature page be something like, I don't know, cut off. Something like S dot. No, don't. The signature page, don't add prefix. Just name it like one of one or one of two. That signature page is just off to the side. You don't want to add a P dot because that's for the plan set. You don't want to reuse that prefix. So just one of one, one of two. If you end up having two sheets, that signature sheet is not really. You don't really need those to be digital signatures. We're not concerned about them being, re-digitally signed or anything like that. It's just an initial signature off to the side. So that page is definitely has more, I guess, give on what actually ends up on there. Okay, so any questions in the audience about anything? I know it's a lot of times easier after we're done to just come up and talk to me, but on the sheet index, it'll pull that sheet number. So whatever's listed on that sheet. What do you mean? Oh, the title. I'm sorry. I'm talking about the indexer app. Sorry. Yeah, on the title sheet, yeah, you should just, P dot 1 to P dot whatever it goes to. Well, they're generating the index on it manually. So, but yeah. Okay, well, ended 10 minutes early, so we stayed pretty much on schedule, it looks like. So with that, we'll conclude today's meeting. Thanks everyone again for coming out. We'll stick around up here for a little bit because I have more questions, more individual questions. But thanks for coming out.